please join me for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. It's the January 16th, 2020 meeting of the Town of Poughkeepsie Planning Board. Just start off, all our public hearings tonight are to be adjourned till February or March, just to let you know. And for those who wish to speak concerning any application on tonight's agenda, when you come to the podium, we ask that you state your name and address, and we also ask that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes per speaker. In addition, if you share the concerns of a prior speaker, you do not need to repeat their statements, but may simply state that you share those concerns. During the public comment portion of the meeting, the planning board will listen to and consider any comments made, but will not respond to them during the meeting. Any questions should be directed to the board and not the applicant as the board or the board's consultants. As with comments, the board will listen to questions, but will not answer them this evening. Finally, please note that written comments are always welcome. First up, Vassar in an Institute site plan hearing, seeker review. I move that we adjourn this application to February 20th, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. What do we got? 6-0. Next up, Medi USA Group, site plan hearing proposed for a modified use of an existing building to provide processing on North Grand Avenue. I move we adjourn that public hearing to what's the March date? March 19th, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next hearing is T-Mobile Faith Assembly of God at 25 Golf Club Lane. I move that we adjourn that hearing to February 20th, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. At this time, I move that we allow public comment on any other items on tonight's agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Is there anyone in the audience wish to comment on items on tonight's agenda? Or, come on up, Bill.
This is an unusual chair for me to sit in. I'm Bill Carlos, I'm on the town board. And the recent events have caused me to want to come and speak to you about a couple of basic things. First thing is, thank you. The amount of work that the individuals on this board do is astounding. And I don't think 1 in 100 members of our community understand the amount of work. I do. It's significant. Thank you. Each one of you. Second, most important, you were each appointed by a councilman. My recommendation was for Bob from the second ward. Each one of you were done that way. And then the town board votes to put you here. And there's a series of rules and laws that keep you separate from the town board. We are the tainted politicians that sit here on Wednesday nights and really can't, and I believe shouldn't be involved in the process that you're involved in. We can do the comprehensive plan, we can pass the zoning law, we can do that. But you live and breathe and go through this, and I firmly believe there shouldn't be any interference, and I'm not going to speak about any plan. The point that I wanted to bring about, and I think it's an important point, and every once in a while it has to be said. You, this board, are the last step to protect the people of this town from development or from bad plans. or from all of the errors that you've seen in your times on the board. Sometimes, when I sit there, and I sit where Eric is, I think, you find yourself lost in the question, especially when there's some controversy to it. I know I've sat there feeling that feeling. What I do then is I go back to the basic. I was elected. That means people went to a poll and pulled a little lever next to my name. And that's who I work for. Not any corporation, not any business, not any engineering company, no spokespersons, no lawyers. The people. Simple stuff. When a question comes up, and is a choice between what a company wants or what a corporation wants or anything that comes in front of you, if there's that kind of doubt, please go back to the point of you're the last line. I know from passing laws, you can't think of everything, and there are gaps and holes. That's why you're here, because somebody might come in front of you where we did it wrong or we didn't do it enough. Please resort back to who we all work for, all of us. And I think if you look around our communities, in our neighborhoods, we do a fantastic job. And thank you. Please keep the people in mind. If you wouldn't want to live next door to whatever is being discussed, then other people don't want to be. And who comes out? Who's more important here? I appreciate everything you do. I'm a phone call away to any one of you at any time. I don't know how much help I can be, but please don't stop what you're doing. And please think about the people in the town first. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you for your comments, Bill. Is there anyone else in the audience wish to speak tonight? And any other agenda items? Do you wish to speak tonight, Yvonne? Okay. Seeing none, I move we resume the meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. First up on the site plans is Hudson Heritage redevelopment project. First up, zoning text amendments. Come on down. Please, describe what,
Hi, everybody.
what you're
I'm
looking
Marty
forward to.
Berger, managing member of Sabre North, which is a member of Sabre, EFG Sabre, SC LLC, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the application. And with me tonight is Mark Schulman, the principal of Design Development Group, which is our architectural firm on the vertical buildings of the shopping center component. We have requested various tweaks to the zoning regulations that would make our planned unit development a better project to operate. We think they're consistent with the intentions, but when we went through the various particulars with our attorney and Attorney Cooper, we found that these little tweaks were necessary in order to make a comprehensive development operate as it's intended. So for that reason, we set forth the zoning amendment requests, and we're happy to address any particular item that you'd like to talk about.
Okay. Thanks, Marty.
Thank
We'll,
you.
Get through it. Start with Eric.
The board, we broke down the requests as they were presented into 5 separate proposals for amendments to the zoning code. One deals with definitions, another one deals with the uses, more definitions and a list of uses for the HRD district. And a fourth deals with outdoor dining areas and private property, and the last deals with outdoor seating areas and structures within the public right-of-way. So we passed them on from the applicant and provided you with an opportunity to consider each of them. The board is free to if you have questions about some of them, you can kind of maybe deal with them all at once when you're ready to send a complete recommendation back to the board, but there is the ability to deal with them separately if you want to. We're recommending that you discuss each of them with the applicant. Some of them we thought could use a little bit more information as to why they were needed, or slightly more better rationale and understanding of what the applicant is trying to accomplish. And then the board could consider if the specific language or mechanism proposed is the most appropriate way, or if they want to recommend a different alternative, or to go with it as presented.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Good explanation. Yes, as we go around the board, please take a look at each one, what your questions are. Some of them are straightforward, but some we have questions on, so.
Do we want
let
to
me
do
see
them one
if-
at a time, or?
Yeah, I think I think anyone, let's discuss them one at a time, that's easier, I guess, keep straight. Let me start with Liz on each one, if she has any comments, those are.
Liz has not reviewed these.
Okay.
We
Okay.
with staff,
all passed.
staff level.
All right. In that case, let's start with Peter on the first item, which is Amendment 1 to coolers and floor area.
I really, I don't really have a problem with it. I'm not sure under definitions in our code, if we, is this on? If we've defined walk-in cooler, that's important to define, since we're really changing or making an addition to the code. Should we actually have a definition for walk-in cooler so there's no ambiguity going into the future, in case there should be any question about square footage, type of construction, location, screening, and so forth.
All right. Good point.
Also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That's fine. For this item, I'm good. That's fine.
Ben, anything? Nicole?
I think my questions about this particular one was whether or not they were completely outside of the building or if they were attached to the building. For instance, with my family, we have 2 technically external coolers. However, you get access to them inside the building, and then just majority of it is outside of the building. So I didn't know if that's what we were talking about, or if we were talking about coolers that stood alone. And then at that point, I think we would have to have some type of fencing around them so that, there was screening. So that was my only kind of question.
Do they abut with a? Yeah. Our recollection is that they abut, and you open one door to the building, and then you open the next door into the cooler. There's not a space in between them where you can run back and forth in between. There's some sort of vacuum, not vacuum seal, but like when you're at an airport, when you're going onto an airplane, that kind of thing that connects the two.
Okay.
But it's not part of the building structure in any way.
Right. Okay.
Can you clarify, is this mainly along the Main Street businesses, or?
For example, on the little restaurant, on the most, I'm not sure how to describe it, most right-hand side here, this one, that one.
Yep.
It's on the back side of that building.
Oh, gotcha, so that little square there.
It really has to do, it's not an operational thing, it just has to do with whether we're charged as, quote, floor area, because retailers don't pay rent on it. So to the extent that retailers don't pay rent on it, if we were charged as part of our floor area, it would become an economic hardship, because then we would lose the intention of being able to rent the full amount of square foot. And it's less on us and more actually on other other developments where you have a limited amount. Here, this 153,000 is actually part of a bigger, so we have some extra room to play. But if we were another freestanding shopping center that didn't have the extra GLA, gross leasable area, you would materially impacting a developer's economics. So, but in a situation like this, we're still not receiving any rent from it. It's not, there aren't any customers using it. There's no parking associated with it. And so for all those, you wouldn't tax it. you would tax the building itself. So for all of those reasons, we thought it would be appropriate to ask for the amendment.
All right, thanks, Marty. Let's continue on. Bob, anything?
Yeah, just want to
Can you
understand.
pull your mic down, Bob? Just
These coolers, is there any way to get in them from outside the building?
No,
So you have to be in and then you go through a series of entrances?
Correct,
to do
yes.
that. And how many are you expecting to have and how big are they?
were they 6 by 10?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like 6 feet by 10 feet, 7 by 11. So far, I think there's only 1 or 2 tenants that have the need.
Have one each? Or are there multiples for a business?
I'm sorry?
Are there multiples for a
No.
business or each one is?
As far as so far, where we are in terms of leasing, 60, 70%, we have 2 tenants, each have 1 cooler.
So kind of shed-sized.
Yeah.
Anything, Joan?
My comment would be that I don't really have a problem with it, but I would feel more comfortable if it was limited to just in this district, as the applicant had proposed in the alternative. That would be my input, if that's possible.
All right. Thanks, Joan. Yeah, I'd be concerned about opening it up completely and not having any limit on the square footage of them. So we may want to discuss that as far as square footage. It's not something, we wouldn't want like something huge
Yeah.
outside of ShopRite or something.
Right, it's a de minimis amount.
Would you have a recommendation on what we could limit to a square footage?
In terms of a cooler,
Yeah.
you could do it on a, well, I guess if they're, for example, 6 by 10 is 60 square feet, if you did it at no more than, what, 5%, 3%?
Say
Yeah.
100 square feet or
You do-
something?
Yeah, you do like I would recommend maybe a percentage of the store itself. So for example, this tenant is 2,100 square feet, so, you know, it would be 5% or less of the floor area. And that's really a small tenant, so I don't think it would ever be come close to 5, but in this case, the tenant is so small. Where you probably want to give thought in the future is, you know, larger tenants typically just dock trailers, storage trailers in their back area, which is something that you might want to, you know, consider avoiding in the future.
Yeah, we don't want to have those piling up,
Right.
especially in this walkable district area. All right. Does anybody have any comments on the 5% or less? Everybody okay with that?
No, I think we should evaluate that a little bit more and
Yeah.
come back with some thoughts
Okay.
about that for you for the next
Let
time.
the staff investigate that, but that's a recommendation right now that we'll look into. Next up is the definition for a memory care facility in this district, or definition for memory care total, and that couples with the third one, which is adding the memory care and assisted living as a use in this district. Start with Joan this time, or start, see what you say.
I guess I don't really have an objection. Do you have any sense of how much of you must have somebody interested in doing this type of use. Do you have a sense of how large it would be percentage-wise of the overall residential use?
Typically, memory facilities, if it was a standalone and nothing else, they're typically in the 60, 70 unit range, as far as I've seen, from Florida to New York. You just can't really manage much more than that. We don't have a dedicated unit or operator at the moment for something like that. We have an operator that wants to have that, would consider that as part of an ALIL complex. That would in total be 95 or 100 units. But we just wanted to make sure that we had the flexibility. I personally wasn't 100% sure if we had the ability to have, you know, ALIL or senior care. I wasn't sure, in my layman's interpretation of the docs, what exactly was permitted. So in part, I put this out there to make sure that everything that I contemplated would be allowed here. And our council focused in on, well, memory care might not be something that's not. So the answer to your question, it's certainly under 70 in metropolis like Orlando or Tampa. I would think it's less here.
Okay, yeah, no, I don't really have any objection. I'm just curious to hear, what the other members have to say.
All right. Thanks, Joan. Bob?
Yeah, in the concept, I don't have any problem with it. Curious, the, excuse me, the wording of highlighting Alzheimer's as, for example, I was just saying dementia, all forms of dementia. I don't know if you had Alzheimer's and other forms of memory that aren't dementia. Is that,
Whatever you'd like, we're fine.
I mean, I don't think it's a big deal, but Alzheimer's is a form of dementia.
Sure, absolutely.
And there's many other kinds, right? So
Fine
if
with
that's
whatever
the
language.
focus of this, then I think it's
So you would-
easier to describe it that way.
So you would say Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia versus,
Or other forms of memory
Cognitive.
impairment in general.
Well, that's
and
what-
not limited to
Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's. or-
Well, it's not. It says and other forms.
Yeah.
So,
Not alcohol or drug-induced.
Among others, yeah.
not temporary forms. All right. Nicole?
Yeah, I don't really have much to say about either of these. I think that we need both of these things. So I think they'd be really important to your project, so, yeah.
Okay. So you're good with that. And Ben?
Not really. I just have a question. Is this included in the total residential, or does it change it?
Yeah, so how does this impact the
We
density?
contemplate that out of the 750 units that were approved, that if we had ALIL dementia facility, it would be included in that 750.
Okay, so if you had 100 units of assisted living, memory
Yeah.
care, then that would leave 650 units for other
Right,
things. Okay,
right.
one for one. Good
Our
question.
understanding is the only thing that's not, doesn't get counted against the 750 is the hotel.
Good question, Ben. Peter?
Ditto. The unit allocation, you have 750 units you had approved. Just want to make certain that it's spelled out that it's a one-to-one allocation. If you get 1 unit of memory care facility equals 1 unit residential housing,
Correct.
so that there's no question.
That's fine, that's great, thank you.
All right, so I think that takes care of our definition and number 3 here. Unless anyone else has any comments on assisted living versus memory care. Because they oftentimes encompass each other. Assisted living place has a memory care unit within it.
Yes.
It was it intentional that it referred only to permanent memory impairment?
No,
So
nothing
it could be,
intentional.
so it doesn't have to be limited to permanent?
That's correct.
That's not a need of your clients.
Correct.
All right, number 4 is relation to the hours of operation and of the outdoor dining and outdoor music, et cetera. Let's go around the board, discuss that. Start with Peter this time.
Just want to be certain, and I think this, again, is something that has to be spelled out. The HRDD district is, your project has 2 sections. One is a residential section, one is a non-residential section. I just want to be certain that if we make these text amendments, that it refers only to the commercial side of your project and not the residential side.
I'm fine with that.
You understand my point?
Yes, I mean,
In terms of clarity, we don't want to, since the HRDD covers both a residential section and a commercial section, this will be applying only to the commercial portion of the project.
That sounds fine, sounds appropriate.
and I'd wonder if we'd want to go further and, define a distance from the residential, how close it can be for the outdoor music. Because you have apartments down in that, near there as well, but they're fairly far away, but
Yeah.
still.
You're fairly far
We may
away.
want to look at defining a distance. Ben? Anything?
Nope.
Nicole?
No.
Bob?
The electronic, the amplified music, noise, whatever it is strictly indoors, right?
Yes, I mean,
I mean, you're not going to have outdoor speakers. I'm just questioning because I don't know how far it is from the residence on whatever side that is, looking at the picture on the left, to the first building that's a restaurant. And if they're going to have amplified music, is it
Yeah.
close enough where?
we don't, I think that if we're not talking here bars, outdoor concerts, or events, and you can certainly clarify that. I mean, I think we're talking here, maybe a restaurant might have, 5 or 6 outdoor tables and might play some soft background music. That's the intent of what we're looking for. And if you'd like, you can say not intended to be outdoor concerts, music blasting, bar-type environments. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the former.
Right. And do you know how far from the restaurant to the residence?
Well, the closest building to the residence, which is the multifamily on the lower ring, has to be a few hundred feet. There's a couple, it's at least a football field.
Right, so you'd have to be cranked up pretty good.
It's
to
not,
reach that.
we would, it's not, you can put in the ordinance, quote, so not to be heard from the residential units. That's not the intention of what we have, what we're asking for.
I just had an experience over the weekend. I won't mention the name of the place, but we were there for dinner, and they happened to have an open mic downstairs, and we were upstairs. And somebody decided they were going to scream and shout, and you couldn't talk where they were. So, we mentioned it to the owners there, but it's people can get carried away with this idea of amplified music, and
Feel free to clarify it if you'd like. That's not what we're looking for.
my concern is it's not going to affect the residents who might be near. I don't know if there's residents on the other side, but I noticed that there's one on.
Yeah, just on the
Bob,
west,
excuse
on the
me,
north
Bob.
side.
Bob, just to be certain here, under section 102B, 8, outdoor music, live performances, or sound amplified from the interior of the principal structure shall be prohibited except in the HRDD.
Right,
So in other words, it would be permitted in the HRDD.
it's permitted.
It would, under the terms of what's being proposed here, it would
Right,
be
I
permitted.
understand that, but my concern is that amplified music is not so loud that it affects the residents who are.
Well,
nearby.
would still, although it's not stated here, it would still be subject to the town's sound ordinance.
I mean.
Or should it be stated?
Basically, they're trying to push it to 11 PM, so it's.
Well, maybe we should state, since
Extends
it's not,
the ordinance, I think, is 10
would
PM.
be subject to the town's noise ordinance.
And/or you can say, provided that such music cannot be heard from the residential units in the HRDD.
Yeah,
Or some-
that's really,
That's tough
we really can't enforce that.
Yeah.
The only means of enforcement we have is the noise ordinance. So,
The noise ordinance is based on property lines.
And DBA,
this is all
right.
one, the residential and commercial in this case are all on the same property. So
There'll be
the-
subdivided parcels.
Yeah, and also, if you create a separation and distance from the uses where this is permitted and residential districts, you may also be able to create a buffer for the HRDD, because it's a integrated community, so you may also be able to look at it that way. It's not going to completely stop sound, but at
No.
least it'll mitigate the potential impact.
that's actually 4B11. To ensure that nearby residential districts are appropriately shielded from noise and light, facility may require visual and noise mitigation such as walls, fences, landscaping, etc. So that's already in the ordinance, and it would include HRDD.
So I guess one of the things we should do with all of these items is take these comments and then perhaps
Try to-
try to refine,
Wordsmith the.
wordsmith some of
the
this and come back
recommendations.
to the planning board.
Wordsmith.
Wordsmith, yeah.
Joan, did you hear from you yet?
Yeah, I just agree with Bob. I agree with Bob that, you know, further detail needs to be wordsmithed into the language to really get to the intent of allowing this, that it's not going to be allowed
Okay.
music, that's all.
No, I understand the environment you're trying to create is, you know, things, there'll be younger people and they want to be out later, and that's fine. So just want to make sure it doesn't get carried away. All right, and the last one up is similar thing, the outdoor dining, to have more hours and structures in the outdoor dining.
Is this for in the public right-of-way?
In the
right?
public, yes,
Yeah.
so it's on the wider sidewalks, et cetera, which is understandable for this district. Can you just briefly, Marty, say, you know, what type of platforms or things you're looking at before we go around the board?
Well, we've created these these parks and areas for people to gather and sit and eat. In fact, Mark's going to propose some additional ones. And we've encouraged the restaurants to have outdoor seating as part of their operations. And they have, you know, accepted it and want to pursue it. So that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. So in our leases, the tenants have said, well, we'll lease the space, but we also want a right to have a little area that we can put a short fence and an entry and put some tables and chairs. So we say, that's fine, provided that is permitted, and provided that you be 100% responsible for policing that area every day. So the tenants want to have the outdoor seating and make it available to hopefully what will be a lot of pedestrians walking up and down the road.
All right, thanks, Marty. Let's go around the board then. Ben, anything?
I know we're talking about restaurants and shops and town center type thing, but with all this music and lighting and stuff, do you anticipate any tenant that might want to do catering, even on a small scale, that might affect this, you know?
No, not at this time, no.
Okay.
And, you know, it's, I don't think we're going to have all this music, et cetera, but I think that, you know, what we're looking to create is the ability to have an ambiance in front of the restaurants, no different than you would enjoy, we would all enjoy.
Right, but nothing like a place for baby showers or small weddings or anything
No,
like that?
no.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm picturing more like Faneuil Hall or Hoboken Street there, where they have, you know, outdoor dining on the streets, but, you know, just fenced it off with some planters or some
Yeah, exactly.
gates or whatever. And then, so it's semi-permanent,
Yes.
Sort
So
of.
they don't have to bring it in every night.
but you don't have to bring it in every night, like the ordinance states, okay? Peter, anything further?
I think it could be very appealing if it's handled properly. My only concern would be maintenance of the outdoor dining areas. Since you're not going to be in an ownership position, I'm assuming you're subdividing, you're going to be selling some property.
No.
Then maybe, I don't know if there could be something, a provision in the lease, you know, to ensure that, you know, if there's outdoor dining that's properly maintained.
Yeah, we do that. Any tenant that has outdoor space is required in the lease agreement to police it, clean it, to top quality standards, and/or we have the right to come in and do it on their behalf and charge them with a penalty. I know in my town where I live, there's the bagel store opened a little outdoor area, and as a result, the pizza store did, and then the little village market did, and it's really nice in spring and the summer to walk the street and see people outside. And they do, these operators do a good job of cleaning it because it's
good
the
for
front
business.
entrance of the business.
Sure.
Also, as part of your approval, one of the conditions was that the applicant was to provide us with a proposed master declaration for the commercial space, which they have, and does include requirements of cleaning and
Yeah,
maintaining this area.
it doesn't specifically cite the outdoor dining, just basically covers
The
sidewalk. and-
rights of way, yeah.
So
Yeah.
if that could be included in the overall, you know, where there are outdoor dining facilities, that they be included in that master agreement.
Okay.
Thanks, sounds like David's taking a note on that one. That's pretty good. Nicole?
No, I don't have it.
Bob? Anything further? Joan?
Yeah, could you just, I'm not understanding in the first paragraph about the use of platforms on which tables and chairs would be placed. Can you,
Restaurants sometimes do that. They'll put a platform on the sidewalk, and then they'll put like a fence around it, and then they'll put tables and chairs on top. It's just like an ambiance thing to make it look nice and appealing.
It's also because technically the sidewalk's pitched,
oh,
so
okay.
that water drains away from the storefront.
Oh, so just to level it out?
Pretty-
Oh,
yeah.
okay. And then in paragraph 2, it goes on to, it just seems like it's a little too open-ended. I don't know if we could maybe stop it at some point where it's defining what is allowed there instead of just leaving it open-ended.
I'll leave that to David's
Yeah.
recommendation.
Number 2?
I mean, all those things are important for the.
Yeah, I
for
mean,
the-
I think
for
it's
the-
okay
for the
to,
ambiance of that
Right.
streetscape.
Well,
Right.
But
So those are existing in the code now. The only thing that would be added is except in the HRDD.
so, but I mean, they would be allowed to put anything on there. Because it ends with not specifically permitted herein on the sidewalk is
Yeah.
prohibited. It just seems like it would be open-ended.
You know, excuse me, we could craft language to limit it, although I think we would need some direction from the town as to what would be acceptable, what would not. But certainly, we can try to wordsmith it.
Okay.
All right, we'll take a look at that then. Yeah, overall, I mean, you're creating a better environment there, so I think we just want to wordsmith these, as you say, and, for example, you know, if you're putting these platforms up or gating area, you still have to make sure you have that passable 5 feet,
Yeah.
5 feet or plus the sidewalk to get past.
How wide are the sidewalks in the proposal? I mean, generally, I know some spots were 20 feet
20 feet from building to curb.
from building to
Would be on
curb,
the,
right? so-
Along Winslow Gate.
When we created the width, we contemplated, you know, the store, an area. We contemplated these outdoor dining areas, a landscape berm, a sidewalk, and then another landscape berm. So it's,
So
we
there would be
created a
still
20-foot.
significant area, room for
Right.
pedestrian passage, right? So we might just include some language to make sure that that's something that is looked at, but.
Right,
you
so
know,
the platform doesn't go right
I
out.
think
to the
you'll
street.
find that you have more than 5 feet left over, much more.
Yep. Sounds good. All right, any other comments on the zoning items? All right, we'll let the department work with David to do some additional work on these recommendations and move on from there. All right, while you're sitting here, next up on the agenda is Hudson Heritage amended site plan. I understand you have a presentation for that?
Yes, so we received comments to the site plan application, and Mark and his team were able to address a good amount of them. A couple we can't address, but we can explain and hopefully mitigate some of the concern. And with that, I would ask Mark to walk us through what he proposes to be changes to the original site plan in response to the comments that were provided to us. I would just, remind everyone that the entire project, 156 acres, is completely tied to the ability to get half a dozen national retailers on the commercial end, because it's only the commercial end and only the national retailers that will provide the financing to start the project, to get it going, so that we can get to the north and all of the others. The lenders aren't looking toward the little, restaurants or the shops or the local merchants for the creditworthiness. So, yes, I mean, frankly, between all of us, sometimes we don't like the look or the feel of some of these national retailers, but or regional retailers or local for that matter. But to some degree, I need you to understand that it's a necessity of the evil, or evil necessity of what we have to deal with. And while we have a vision how things should look, they also have a vision of what they need in order to be successful. As you know, in today's world, retailers are far and few between. So to be able to have so many at this point in time say, yes, we're going to come here, we have to, be like a waiter and serve to them what they need. So, but failing that, putting that aside, Mark was able to address quite a few of the comments. So let me turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mark. So what I have here in this first image is essentially what was submitted as part of the amended site plan. And in hindsight, we should have done some things or clarified some things, which I think is creating some of the potential problems. So what I'm going to show you, and I can toggle back and forth between them, is actually the site plan we're working with. And I'll show you what changes and how I think we address most of these issues. So in this particular case, and I'm just going to use this mouse. I think can you see this? Okay. So previously in the old plan, there was a much larger building and it sat much further to the east off of Winslow Gate. Well, we decided, we want to really create a main street. Let's lengthen the main street, so let's get that building closer to Winslow Gate. And we did, and maybe it's too close. So it's not terrible, but I think what we can do, the attempt is to push it back slightly and give ourselves a little bit more space in front of the building to provide those, those pedestrian amenities. Likewise, on I, we also pushed it closer to the street. And then inadvertently, there was this plaza which sits on the back between Route 9 and the building. It should be sitting on Winslow Gate, so we moved. We swapped it out. You'll see that in this next plan. So,
Mark, can I just, while we're on those two buildings, the main entrances to those buildings would be located on what side of the building?
All right, so here's the plan. So right now, so if you look at, so this is J tweaked accordingly. So right now, the thought is that you can enter off the parking lot in the back here, or off of Winslow Gate here. There are no tenants. So this is the other thing you need to keep in the back of your mind. Not all these spaces are tenanted. And when these guys come in, as Marty said, a lot of them are nationals. So they come in with their prototypes. They have very specific floor plans, very specific operational needs. So what you'll see here are, I don't want to call them concept, but they are concept in that, in some way. These building footprints will be tweaked and pushed and pulled slightly to accommodate whatever those prototypes are. They're all a little bit different. This building N, for example, this is, we've got very specific tenant criteria. That is the building footprint. We know exactly how big it is. We don't know who's going to be in F yet. We don't know who's going to be in J. So I think for all of us to move forward, the only way we really can is to be flexible in understanding that more changes are to come. Entrances might change. I don't know if there's going to be one tenant or 6 tenants. So
I mean, we understand it just entrances on both sides, because that's the way,
that's
the
it.
parking's
That's
behind
really
anyway,
it.
but,
Yeah.
but we also want to understand, I think where Mike's trying to get to is that, that we're trying to maintain that pedestrian streetscape. and
Absolutely.
have
Yes.
a lot of the main entrances off of the,
Yeah, I
off
think
of Winslow
in
Gate.
all cases, we have entrances off of Winslow Gate,
Can
and
I
where we
just-
have parking fields.
May I just add a comment? Let me just share with you for a minute about what the process is, because I think it'll better explain what Mark's trying to address. So originally, we had a site plan, we had 0 tenants, and it was Mark's and Liz's and the town planning board's wish of what this thing would look like. So then you start filling in tenants. So we have a tenant here at the end cap. So that dictated how this building comes together. Then we have 2 actual real tenants down here. So that dictates how that building will get there. And then we have a retailer here that dictates how this building will get there. So while certain of these buildings are, quote, fixed and real, and maybe it would be good for us to distinguish going forward which ones are fixed and real as compared to concept, so that we don't spend a whole lot of time nitpicking on a building like what we're talking about now that is going to be dealt with later on. That might help us all. What we do is we just take the square footage so that we maintain the 153, and we adjust all of the other buildings. So while we're really here in order to get the amended site plan done so that we can move forward with the buildings that we are going to construction documents with and building permits, we also, by definition, need to present the rest of the site plan, which is conceptual. So you reacted to something that was conceptual, and fine, we addressed it here.
Yeah, we understand that was conceptual, but the intent of that conceptual was a certain intent, and we just want to make sure.
Right, so we need to do a
that
better
intent is
job of
maintained.
following the intent on the conceptual balance.
Yeah, they got dropped, I think, in the amendment. That's why, so what you're seeing here is a little bit of a modification back to where we were originally in concept. So, and building K, just again to toggle back and forth, that was what, this is how K was presented. It's a big rectangle. The reality is it will be articulated on the corners with entrances and carved out where there can be some outdoor dining. So building K is one of the larger buildings. Right now, the thought process is that this is the one that gets, as we're modifying this 153,000 square feet, this is a building that's going to get carved up and modified to accommodate that final number. So with that, so we've made those modifications. I don't think there are any issues with L. I did have a conversation with Kyle earlier today. He actually pointed out that the size of the plaza in front of L is actually larger than what was previously submitted. And I don't think there were any other comments relative to the east side of Winslow Gate. I think N was also okay, which leaves us with building M. And what's happening here with the drive-through and the parking. And so what you can see here, it's a little bit small here, but what we're trying to do here is that we see an opportunity to actually create a different environment. And what we're proposing now is that we create a very active pedestrian element here. If we can screen the wall, with the screen wall, we can separate the pedestrians from the drive-through traffic and the parking spaces. We had a conversation earlier in the week, and we thought about what can we do to activate this space. If a tenant is far enough back, we don't really have the ability for that tenant to activate it. So the thought was to bring in food trucks. And so we could do, and obviously it can be seasonal or not, but if we can provide food trucks and with the ability to access the sidewalk, we can create some outdoor seating areas with planters and hung lights that string across over the top on both sides. We also wanted to think about what it might be like in colder weather, and we're actually proposing some fire pits over here on the end with Adirondack chairs and maybe even some game tables that could be scattered throughout. You start to get a whole different vibe here. This wall we thought would be a great opportunity to do some kind of an art wall, and again, that can change over time. And here are some images of how we think this space could turn out. Again, the idea of food truck, some of these game tables, lots of movable tables and chairs, so people, they're not everything should be fixed. We don't believe that everything should be fixed. Gives people gives groups of people the ability to pull together, and while typically game tables would be fixed, and that's fine. And then, there could be pergolas. We've got outdoor fire pits, and this is just one example of what could be done with a wall. There are plenty of art programs, certainly within the community, that this could, be used for. So that's the concept right now about how we can, really handle this space, which we know is a concern and has really provided a void in the streetscape. But we think this helps close that gap.
It could also be seasonal activity during the winter. It could be Christmas trees. It could be outdoor settings, so on and so forth. But it's an activated area. The screen wall would not be tall. It would be a half wall, a 4-foot wall, that kind of thing.
All right, thanks for describing your ideas on those. let's go to Eric first. Or shall I go right to Liz?
Yeah, I'll defer to Liz.
All right.
Okay.
Looks like they've made some changes.
I don't know if I want to, go through and repeat comments. I'd love an opportunity to look at this. I think just to kind of do a quick recap, when we looked at the concept, the idea was that buildings B through, I think it was F, looked fine. We had concerns about buildings I and J, but we were kind of saying that was a nice transition for that to be office at the end of a business area. I see what you're trying to do on building J, I think it is. Putting some pedestrian amenities in the front. What I would just say, I'm just going to give my response off the top of my head here. Maybe pushing back parking to the north of building J and having a little bit more pedestrian amenity there, just to kind of break up, add more to the streetscape. Maybe not a giant width there. I like what you did with building I, south of building J, flipping that around and having the entrances on the street. I do hear what you're saying regarding building L. Again, that's on the west side, the sort of middle area with the plaza. The plaza has a different configuration, and I could see during the review that there was a certain amount of area there, but it wasn't clear what was happening with the rest of the plaza area, because there was a sort of central core plaza. So I see the proposal that you have in front of Building M. I guess I like the concept that you have there. I think it has a lot of potential. And I'd like to sit with Eric and Michael and perhaps some members of the project team to go over this.
Well, and hear from the board a little bit too.
Right,
on-
of
on
course.
Yeah, I
your-
think, I think we could do that. Also, we have a few people that specialize in activating these public areas, and they have a lot more expertise. So we can get them on a phone call, and while Mark has a couple of these ideas, they can show you 100 different and unbelievable, exciting opportunities to activate these sort of areas.
Yeah, and it's nice to see this response. One of the things that I do when I look at this is picture the pedestrian walking through the site and finding the gaps. So I would encourage you to revisit those. So if a person is coming off of Route 9 and walking into the site, and they were going to move as a pedestrian all around each of the buildings, if you can examine that, find any gaps or areas where a pedestrian might
Right.
have some hesitation or maybe not feel so secure in making a crossing, et cetera, that those things should be examined.
We took a really hard look at that, and if you go back to the original inspiration photos that we have, which were really the town square at King of Prussia, they did it. We think they did an incredible job of creating the walkways between the buildings, connecting the parking lots in the back to the retailers in the front. So we kind of modeled that in terms of the feel, the look, making sure that the windows were on the sides, landscaping, wide walkways, covered in some instances and open so that they felt very airy and light.
I guess I still have a big concern about the drive-through for Building M, the big one running sort of through the front. I mean, I can see that there's an attempt in this newly amended plan to try to activate that area. It's not clear to me why that drive-through couldn't be in the back. And another thing that I did discuss with Michael and Eric, and I don't remember if I discussed it with the planning board or not, was the possibility of taking Building M and turning it so that it's sort of longwise with a short end on the street and a drive-through going a different way. I don't know if you've already explored that, but I still feel concerned about the drive-through between the building and the...
What about like the drive-through on the
street.
side, perhaps, on the north side of the building?
We've turned this building 100 different ways with this retailer, and for a myriad of reasons, every single one of them just hasn't worked.
Why don't they like the drive-through in the back? What's the issue there?
Because they don't consider that the back. They consider you consider it the front, they consider it the back, because, the presence of the building the presence, the building is dictated by the entrance to the parking, the relationship between the entrance and the parking lot. Because we have a town center with no parking in the front, which is fine for those tenants that want to come and shop in a store, have restaurant, and are willing to walk, 50, 60 feet the length of these smaller spaces. This is the one and only larger box that we have. It has to have the entrance at the front by the parking lot. So that the entrance and the relationship of the entrance to the parking lot, it dictates the entire store.
I mean, honestly, I know that this board and other boards I've worked with have grappled with a commercial retailer having a certain template that they would desire, that they believe is their optimal way of operating. So I could understand them wanting to have visibility from Route 9, but customers can't actually come in directly from Route 9. They have to kind of go around anyway.
Correct.
And the big concern, honestly, in this whole review is that Building M, in this configuration, sort of inserts a highway commercial type design in the middle of the whole concept of the walkability.
Well, I don't think I hope you don't choose to look at it that way. First of all, this is not that's not a restaurant drive-through that's going to have 10, 20, 30, 5 cars. This is a drug store drive-through, and if you look at them, they're only intended for the mom or the dad that comes in the middle of the night to pick up an emergency, or at 11 o'clock at night to pick up an emergency prescription in pajamas. 99% of the traffic and the shopping experience is through the door. This is not a high-volume drive-through, as you could imagine, and you can go in your towns and see it.
All the more reason, though, to want the door to be facing Winslow Gate Road, right?
They want the door with the
Because the people who are
traffic.
going to be shopping, coming to the center, are going to find themselves walking through this area, and they would be, if the door is facing the other way, it's not convenient for them to walk into the drugstore. It's now they have to, unless they've driven there and parked by that entrance. I don't know. I don't see how that makes it
And, yeah.
better for them.
Just to add to that, there is, I don't know if it's a CVS or a Rite Aid up in Kingston. They have drive-through, but the front door faces the street. And the drive-through is in the back. It's actually on the narrow end of the building in the back. Because it isn't, as you say, it's not a huge traffic
It's not a
thing.
big
So people
queue
can
up.
come in and go around the back of the building to pick up their pharmacy stuff. So, anyway,
Have to see what they say. I mean, the other thought I might have is the drive-through on the north side of the building. So
I have to stop you. I'm dead in the water in turning the buildings into drive-throughs. I've gone back and forth, how many times would you say?
We have looked at, took 3 of their prototypes, because they all have different size prototypes. And no joke, we have looked at absolutely every single configuration, put them on the street. Every one, and every single one rejected.
Rejected by them.
By them,
Right.
by them. I think
right.
we certainly appreciate where you're going. So the only other thing that I would add to this conversation, just something to keep in the back of your mind. What if you had CVS right on the street? It's a big blank box with windows. Right? This is, the frontage could be for tenants that could really create a lot of activity along that front. Yes, there'd be a lot of activity going in and out the door, but that rest of that building, that's no great Main Street storefront that I would necessarily have. I actually think that as a compromise, this provides more activity along Winslow Gate than having 3 or 4 windows with, potato chips and toothbrushes and toothpaste and something that rarely, that gets changed out twice a year with an active, front door on the corner. So,
We have that, I have that in my town, in Armonk. We have a drugstore, that's exactly what he's talking about. There's 2 restaurants, a retailer in Armonk.
Yeah.
And then there's a drugstore, and there's a couple of windows, and there's literally a display of bag of potato chips. And, junk, frankly, in the window. It doesn't do anything. And what we've done here is given the fact that it is such a minor used drive-through, and we've created an opportunity to maximize the streetscape. I think we should, let's take a look
Okay.
at. Let me
I
just show
understand-
you.
I appreciate
May I show
the-
you one item?
Go ahead.
Where am I going? Let me see. Did she put it on this file, or is it another one?
this one here,
Okay.
you see that?
Yeah, you gonna click on both of them? Yeah. Click on it, I think. Just click, double click. Maybe not. Huh.
Is it just going to take, is it just taking time? Yeah, okay.
There we go.
Can you open the other one too?
This,
Let's try to open the other one first. So what I'm going to show you is a similar drugstore on Route 9. You probably are familiar with it.
Yep.
So this is on Route 9, and it has a similar type of setting in that Route 9, where we are, is low. The property sits high, you have the landscape berm, then you have the parking lot like this, and you have the front of this building. And then on the side, what you have here, let me see if I can move this over. This is, here you have windows, and this is a double drive-through.
Right,
So
drive-through there,
It's
yeah.
twice as wide. But the point is that,
Well, one's the bypass lane there.
Pardon me?
It's a drive-through plus a bypass lane as well.
Yeah, it's a drive-through. We don't have that. We have a single. But you have a nice fence, you have some landscaping, you have a sidewalk, and then you have. So this is a poor scenario, poor situation as compared to what we're proposing. We're proposing that we have a single drive-through, we have a 4-foot decorative wall, landscaping, and then 20 feet of activated space where you have the food trucks, you have an outdoor area, and so on and so forth. So
how, just to kind of, the activated space that you're talking about, how would that be programmed or managed if that's Rite Aid's frontage? I mean, are they
no, it's
gonna
not.
do
This
that,
would
or-
be would you go back to the, that area is our premises. It's the landlord's area. We control that, we program it, we manage it. And again, if you go back and you give thought to that King of Prussia original pictures, and maybe go back to where you just were, you can see it, later on in there.
So it's on its own separate lot?
It's in the right-of-way, it's in the property that we own. So for example, in this top, the corner photos are similar areas there, as well as all of them. They're programmed by the management company, the ownership entity, and they determine, what kind of outdoor games are there, and fire pits and chairs, and they're responsible for policing it and cleaning it and programming it. But by having more of these areas, can you go back to where you were? If by having more of these areas, you're having more opportunities to do things and change on a regular basis, which brings people in more often than not.
I mean, one thing that comes to my mind is, do you really need all that parking back there? You could even have a little bit wider space, maybe an ice cream stand, I don't know, something.
I would frankly think that we maybe don't need that parking back there. We might have an opportunity to make it compact or maybe potentially even eliminate it. I think that's the one, I think that's the variable that we have to
Okay,
play
that would
with.
give you a little more space to play with, and, because I like your conceptual ideas, and it might also depend on what the other buildings are across the street as far as the draw, and then people are, making use of both of those spaces.
Yes, correct.
But at least you're putting some good thought into it. Liz, do you have anything further?
The only other thing that I wanted to make the board aware of is that We did have some amended, it says amended site plan architectural information, and I urge the board to look at it, but it's some of the buildings, but not all of the ones that were affected by the amendment. But, so I did take a look at those. I don't want to go into detail on that. But the one thing I urge the board to do is, when you're looking at architectural information, is to pull out the April 29, 2019 design guidelines that the board and the applicant kind of worked through in the beginning of the decision, well, middle of the decision-making process. And just revisit those. The architecture that I'm seeing in the December 23rd architectural information and design information, it's this booklet.
Yep.
Pardon my scribbles.
The new one.
It generally looks pretty good, but when I started looking building to building, there were a couple of concerns I had, but I didn't write detailed comments because it's really up to the board. One of the things I observed was it would be good to see a little bit more of the color palette kind of showing up in those buildings, which I don't think would be difficult to do.
If I may,
Yeah.
David, Attorney Cooper, is it this board that looks at those drawings, or is it the town board that determines that it's in, the AHRB, I'm sorry, that determines that it's in compliance?
This board, yeah. This board is also going to do the ARB, the architectural
We do the
review.
architectural review. for-
Oh, okay.
And also, for an amendment to the site plan, they're going to have to make a determination of consistency with the
Right,
DMP
right,
and
right.
the
So,
CEQA.
in terms of what you're looking at, did we do a good enough job of identifying what buildings were, quote, real? I assume that we only modified the buildings that are going forward with construction at this time.
No, actually, some of the buildings and some of the key buildings, I think we didn't really get architectural for.
We didn't
So,
show
for example,
anything.
Building M, which I know is
Yeah,
more
we-
real than some others, we didn't get an architectural.
We wouldn't do that. I think what we should do is a better job of clarifying what changes we're requesting. In other words, if you go back to the site plan, we know that 3-4 of those buildings are now in final CDs. It's those that we need you to focus on.
Right.
And not the rest. So perhaps, let's just go back to the site plan.
Yeah, and my intention was just to kind of
Right.
inform the board.
Okay,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I was
the-
just say K, M, I, and J are not listed in this.
Correct. Okay.
plan At the moment. But I do notice the original plan, you have it flushed out more with showing the outdoor dining and those kind of things, so it looks a little plainer in the new one, but I
Well,
assume,
yeah,
I assume
well-
those facilities are still there. It's
Yeah,
just
I think,
not
yeah.
rendered the same way.
These packages are specific to architecture only, so
Right.
Right.
we tried to put a little bit of that in there, so they weren't, completely void of any context. There's a little bit there, but if I filled it with trees and shrubs, but you might not see the architecture. So it was really about
Right,
looking
it's
at
a
facades and
compromise.
materials, yes, the articulation of window fenestration. So I think that, certainly the color comment is a good one. I do think, though, that as the tenants come on board and they bring their
Right.
colors with them,
Sure.
you're gonna see more, the awnings are gonna be their,
Yep.
their awning color. The
Because it
signs
is a
will be
nice,
theirs.
it's a really nice palette.
Yeah,
It'll give it a nice feel. so.
yeah.
Would you like us to not show anything on the buildings other than the architectural?
No, no,
I guess
and I mean,
it would-
again, I don't usually do the review.
It would be good, though, to
I
be
just
clear
noticed.
about which buildings we're actually talking about looking for architectural approval, because we didn't focus on it for this at all. We really focused on the site plan issue more than anything
Right.
else. But it wasn't that clear
Yeah.
from the material submitted, which ones you were really wanting us to focus in on, and architecture-wise. So if you could do that for
Yeah,
us, that
should we
would help.
clarify it at this point in time?
If you want to.
Yeah, sure. So, building N is there. Actually, I will tell you, though, that we've gotten probably 2 rounds of additional comments from the tenants subsequent to that submission. So here we go. They weren't bad, they were good. They were asking for a couple more awnings over some doors and some more lighting on, over on the drive-through side. Relatively minor comments, and they added some additional canopies. So that's the kind of thing that's going to be ongoing. Buildings, I think Building C, you can review, I think you have building, if I'm not mistaken, N, C, D, E,
F and
L.
yes.
You don't have J, you don't have I, you don't have K.
IJ,
M,
K, and M is the
or,
ones missing.
I guess, I don't know where building B is.
Yeah.
Yeah, or B. So, you know, at this point, I think we would welcome the, you know, comments on those. The others are advancing at a, you know, at a schematic design phase. But I think, you know, I'd love to get the comments in earlier, sooner than later. You know, if they're general comments that we can apply across the board to everything, that would help. This way, at least we're, you know, every time we're coming a little bit closer to what everybody wants to see.
Yeah, if you, I mean, the ones you get, as you get tenants, you need to
Yes, right.
detail them out.
I mean, I could
The only-
definitely see the design inspirations, how they showed up in the building, so that was good.
Right, we
Of the
did.
ones you mentioned, all of those N, C, D, E, and F are all ones that, you know, by Liz's review, they're not changing a great deal by the proposed amendments. Building L, though, is one that is proposed for some substantial changes in the layout, and I don't know if that's, you did give us more detailed architecture on that one, but I don't know if it's going to be it's pretty different in the amended layout than it is as approved.
Right, it's actually, well, it is actually, it should reflect, I got to go back and check and see whether or not, so the comments that come to us last minute, we make these modifications, they go out, and whether Kyle has even had a chance to catch up, Jason's had a chance to catch up to them on the amended site plan is, you know, it comes in from the tenant, and then it just gets dispersed, and sometimes we, you know, we may all catch up to it or not, but it's pretty close to what you're seeing right now in that configuration now. It's real, in fact, I think it's dead on to what we're showing in this plan up on the screen. So if I toggle back, to just, it hasn't changed much.
Looks exactly the same.
Yeah, I think L might be the same.
Yep. And that's the one with the outdoor dining on the patio.
Right.
Such, it's just you don't see the outdoor dining in your rendering, so, because
You
you're
don't.
focused on the architecture.
Correct, correct.
All right, yep, at this point. All right, going through a bit, let's go around the board for additional comments. So start with Joan.
I like the idea of eliminating the parking if possible in front of the drive-through. I think that would soften it. And with respect to the other open space, would that similarly be managed by somebody other than the tenant? Or is that?
Yeah, yes, but all the open space other than the quote, outdoor dining area that's dedicated to a tenant would be managed by the management ownership entity.
And do you know of the buildings that you do have tenants potentially lined up for, do they consider Winslow Gate the main entrance for their
Yeah.
building? They do, okay.
Everyone, yes, everyone's using Winslow Gate. I think because of the different shopping experience, that different traffic generation, the ShopRite and this other drugstore need the access to the parking. But frankly, these other retailers live off of most of this traffic because they'll generate a lot more traffic, they'll park in the front, they'll run an errand, and then they'll go for lunch or go to other retailers, and that's how these retailers mostly live.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
I mean, the food store tenant is probably a generator of 20,000 visitors a week.
I just had a quick question. Did you have a tenant for building K yet? Or 'cause that was the one you'd made that modification there. Was that a?
No.
Or you just
That's
kinda-
a placeholder.
That's still
Gets
conceptual
bigger.
based on- Okay.
K and J get bigger and smaller depending upon what happens
what
with the
happens
rest.
with the other real ones.
But
Gotcha.
we have somebody that's far along on J, and we have somebody that is now looking at half of K.
All right, let's move on. Bob, you have anything?
Just one comment. The site plan we're looking at is dated December 24th, and you've got one that's a little different in a few areas dated today. So I don't think we have copies of these.
Yeah.
Yes.
We do?
Oh,
Oh, this
we don't
one?
have copies, but can we get copies?
We don't have
Yeah, well, I think what we're planning on was hearing your comments to this tonight and then refiling it immediately so that it's on your next
Okay.
hearing, next agenda.
And just go back to the drive-through for the drugstore. What's the volume per hour they expect going through the drive-through?
I think it's a question of less than a half a dozen a day. I can get you the statistic, I'll have it for you I'll submit it with the agenda.
It seemed it was, carried a lot of weight in their decisions.
Sure.
And it's very,
You're
very
right.
little used facility.
Yeah,
Just curious.
yeah.
All right, anything else? Nicole?
How many drive-throughs do you have proposed right now in this project?
4, 5?
Drive-throughs are really convenient, however, they do generate more traffic, which then in turn eliminates walkability a bit. And I think that when we look at this project, we want it to be walkable. We want people to come in, park their cars, then walk to stores, walk to restaurants, walk to retail. So I don't know if we can tweak that a little bit. We just, I don't even know how to say this. I don't want to limit you on drive-throughs, but I think that 5 or more drive-throughs within one particular project just seems like a lot. And I know that that's the way it's going. I mean, come on, people want convenience, they want now, they want to go, they want to get it, they want to get out. However, this particular community, we want it to be walkable. We want people to live, to work, to play, and not to just come and go. So I just don't know how you can tweak that a little bit.
If I can respond to that, I think it's a combination of both. This is a live, work, play community.
Right.
So this is, again, if you look at the bigger picture, we have several thousand people going to be on site. You have 750 units, maybe 1,500 people, a 150-room hotel, another couple of hundred people. And then you have the office building, and you have the traffic generated by the supermarket. You have 2 walkways, one that connects directly to Marist on along Route 9 and one that connects in the back. So you have thousands of people that will be using this day in and day out. And the walkability of this is the convenience of being one of those 2,000 people on site, being able to walk. And that combined with your Marist and your other walking is what is going to keep this vibrant day to day. There's a certain amount of business, however, that is just drive-through, and it's going to be here or it's going to be someplace else. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both. And while the drive-through traffic creates traffic, it also creates the opportunity for people to come and do a drive-through, but do something else as well. It also gives a reason for somebody to come to the shopping center and maybe come back another day. It's just a necessary part of the aggregate dollars that they got to bring in. But this is, we have merchants elsewhere in the Route 9 corridor that have similar operations, but are talking to us and making decisions to move here because of the live, work, play element, and paying higher rent because of the live, work, play element. So they get it completely. And we're achieving it. And similarly, a lot of the residential that we have committed and that we're talking to, and the hotel, want to be here because of the restaurants. They wouldn't be here without the restaurants and the supermarket and the daycare. So I would say that the commitments that we have in the retail and the residential and the hotel, which I think you're aware of, is all evident to the fact that it's working. Scary, huh?
Anything else?
No, that was it.
All right. Ben,
Um,
can you pull your mic down, Ben?
It's good to hear all this and concern with the walkability and the parking and all that. But there's going to be people that are coming by bus. Talk to me a little bit about bus. My aren't what they used to be. I can't tell.
We have three.
Other than on Route 9, are there?
Yeah, I don't have it here, but I can show you on this larger site plan. We have made arrangements with the public bus company to have 3 dedicated bus stops on site. So as coming off, we have, I can't remember exactly where they are, but maybe somebody else knows. But I believe we have a bus stop right in, on Main Street. We have a bus stop.
2 on Winslow.
Maybe you can help me, Liz. I think we have one at the supermarket, one on Main Street, and one up here on the administrative building. So the new bus line that they're adding will start at the train station, go to Vassar Medical Brothers, come up, 3 stops on our property, one here, and one here, go up to Belfair, go to CIA, back to Marist, and to the train station. And that's, from what I understand, is in a loop that hasn't been approved that we were able to obtain.
Great.
That's sufficient. There's none here in this Winslow gate?
Yeah,
There's one right in the middle
All right.
somewhere.
All right. That's it.
Sounds good. Peter?
Just as a sidebar, since Ben brought up, I'm on the County Transit Advisory Committee, and we're working on a pilot program now for smaller buses that would be ideal for your project, like 16 passengers.
Yeah.
Much more inviting, and I think they'll really be a great fit for you, not just for your project, but for projects like Eastdale, also out on Route 44.
We actually designed the 3 bus stops for whatever the county has planned.
Yeah. I've never seen a report from our consultant, Ms. Axelson, as animated as the one that we received regarding this most recent site plan. I'm just going to go through it quickly. Loss of open space, plaza areas, and other pedestrian amenities, diminishment of the walkable design intent, barriers to pedestrian pathways. Let's see here. In terms like revise, add back, eliminate, relocate, revise, eliminate, and restore. And based on what you shared with us tonight, it looks like you're taking her recommendations into consideration.
Mark did.
Or Mark is, and that's great. You know, we had, when you originally came to the board, we had a lot of concerns about the design. We had a special meeting with your architect. You came up with some great ideas, totally transformed, and made us feel a lot more comfortable. And I think that you're making that effort to accomplish that same result right now. But I have to tell you that we got a letter from the county, their comments. The purpose of the Historic Revitalization Development District is to promote a walkable pedestrian environment that integrates residential and commercial uses. And they go on to say, for the reasons stated above, we recommend the board not grant the requested site plan approval until the following condition has been met, and that is essentially bringing it back to a more walkable community to the extent possible to meet your goal and to satisfy really the establishment of the district itself was to be a walkable community. And based on what you've told us tonight, I feel confident that you'll come up with some ideas that will satisfy that.
Thank you. I think we came a long way, and we'll take your input and tweak it a little bit more for next month.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, just to add my comment on the same thing, you know, as the county has recommended, not knowing what the building M is perhaps, but if you can look at getting rid of that parking, that would open up that space for additional things. I could, something that has more frontage on Winslow. I like the ideas you've had with the food trucks and the fountains or fire pits, whatever, but I don't know if that's something else, another small building application like I'm just thinking up in Reykjavik, there's a hot dog stand and seating in front of it or an ice cream stand, and that would just, some kind of structure there perhaps that would also front on the street, not just a temporary food truck that might, just leave it as an empty space all the time.
Yeah, okay.
But, so that's my 2 cents, and I think you're working toward the rest of Liz's comments. That's what we've gone over tonight, and that,
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Can I?
Thank you for a lot of your time.
I'm just wondering, you mentioned that you're hoping the board will focus on Building L, and I don't think there was any discussion of the drive-through for Building L, and since that's it's both part of the plans that Liz had a lot of comments about, but you also want the board to focus on the architecture for it. Could you maybe just talk about that a little bit for the board, and just to see if they get any feedback, so you can get it now instead of next time?
Sure. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the elevations that I had submitted. I didn't know that we would actually be talking about architecture at this meeting while we're talking about the amended site plan. But right now, it looks like there is there's a possibility of a tenant taking the end cap on the south side of the building. That configuration exactly meets their prototype, along with their drive-through. It leaves the rest of the leg here in front of the plaza available for tenants to occupy. So,
It also has outdoor seating.
right, and there is outdoor seating out here. Now, and the fact, these are important facades. They front the plaza. So that front facade has a big pediment on it. I think there's a clock on there. Again, still subject to how many tenants actually come and occupy that space. But, the south side of that building reflects a prototype, and the northern half is somewhat subject to modification based on feedback we get. The primary entrances are obviously off of the main plaza. For the tenant to the south, their entrance is right here on the corner. There is a secondary entrance here off the back. You'll see a couple of arrows here. This is really second means of egress and/or service off the back, but this is primarily service. It's going to be landscape. We actually made the sidewalk a little bit larger there so that we could have more landscape across the back of that building. There won't be many people utilizing that because it is part of the drive-through.
I mean, if there's some kind of landscaping between the drive-through and the parking area to screen that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So the landscaping here, and then we have along the island right here as well.
I think it's a good placement of the drive-through, and everything fronts on the green.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
back street.
Right.
I do like Building M, though. It'd be good if you could get a statistic on how many vehicles per hour per day, whatever they expect.
Yep. Yeah, I'm fairly confident it's nominal.
One other thought, could you explain between Building M and Building L, that access road went from a single lane to two, and then you also added some parking along the side there of Building L, the south side of Building L. What was the necessity for those things, the rationale?
I think, as much parking as we can get. Again, I think most of the pedestrian traffic is here along Winslow Gate. We're hoping to get more accumulation of pedestrians here in the main plaza. Parking on these side streets, like street parking, is kind of like, it's the bonus parking. Everybody gets really excited when you can get a parking spot there, with most of the parking in the back. The other thing is that we also want pedestrian, if there's any pedestrian movement from Winslow Gate to this back parking lot between these buildings, it really wants to happen along this side here. So this walkway is really the key pedestrian activity. We are discouraging any pedestrian activity across here for obvious reasons. We have the drive-through, and they also have their service area across the back here as well. So the cars provide a buffer for pedestrians as well along the side, for pedestrians along the sidewalk.
And any thought to, on the office buildings, I know they're labeled as one-story buildings, any thought about second stories or anything like that? Because it might actually be nice to have, but I don't know if the parking would work, so.
Or that would make the building footprint smaller if you doubled it, and
We have,
as far as,
this is the desired footprint. It's, two-story, you have ADA elevators.
It's a different building.
Then you're gonna get a high building, so on and so forth. So it's not that big, it's a 10,000 square foot building at the most. So we thought, it'd be more appropriate for a single story.
well, yeah, I mean, you have the 3-story apartments nearby there too, so it may be something to look at. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Some continued design as we meet here tonight, but it looks like you got our ideas and Liz's comments, and look forward to seeing you next one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So which one are we doing next?
Good night, Liz. Good night.
Yes. Do you want to switch around? We'll bring Stewart's up.
Stewart's, right?
Next up on the agenda, Stewart's Shops.
You're on the ball, Mrs. Barone.
At 2245 South Road, secret review and special use permit review and site plan review for construction of a new Stewart's Shop and self-service station gas canopy. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
Briefly describe what you've done since the last
Sure.
visit.
Chad Fowler from Stewart Shops. I'm here with Rich from Mazer Consulting. Rich is here to discuss traffic. Since our last meeting, we did receive conceptual approval from the New York State DOT. That was just recently in the last week or so. We did adjust some, per comments from the board, we adjusted the lights to 4,000 Kelvin light temperature. We added the crosswalk across Southgate Drive. We added a note to restripe the lane line on Southgate Drive. We did label the snow storage areas, adjusted the truck route that was hitting the curb on the gas delivery in our delivery truck. We are aware that we need zoning variances. We're hoping that the board has enough information to make a secret determination, because that is required for the zoning process, to complete the zoning process. Rich, do
You want me to hit some of the traffic items? So, we had submitted a report on December 12th of last year. It was reviewed by your traffic consultant, JMC, which we received comments on January 6th. We haven't had the opportunity to provide a written response to those comments as of yet. Some of those comments, as far as the traffic-related comments go, on the traffic study, are fairly technical in nature as far as the analysis methodology, or the analysis, the technical details of the intersection, signalized intersection analysis, which we will respond to in writing. However, we don't really see any significant changes to the results of the study based on those. They're most related to the traffic signal timing recommendations that we have made for the intersections. Ultimately, the traffic signal timing recommendations will have to be reviewed with the Department of Transportation, since they operate the signals on South Road there. Typically, for a development of this size and nature, the department will generally take a wait-and-see kind of approach to the traffic signal, kind of see what the traffic actually is after the development is in place,
Okay.
and then make a determination on what changes need to be made at that time. One of the other comments that your traffic consultant did mention was providing accident data. Unfortunately, we didn't receive that accident data until just today, so we'll provide a summary of that information. Quick review, which based on my review today, there's no significant accident history that is of any concern, but we will go into that in a little more detail in a written response. And then the rest of the comments that we had received from the traffic consultant generally were related to site plan or DOT permitting issues, I would say. Specifically, we talked about the crosswalk on Southgate Road. That modification along with the sidewalk on the frontage will require a DOT permit, and they may have some additional input on how that works out and things like that. But a lot of those will be dealt with in the permitting process, and
Yep.
I think as part of the site plan review. So.
All right, thanks. Go to Kristen.
Yep. Thank you for the overview. Appreciate your time and patience this evening. So the application is on for a seeker review, special use permit review, and site plan review. At this time, staff is recommending that the board defer action on the application, as we did receive a formalized letter from the zoning administrator, now that she is back, outlining several variances that would be required, most notably one as it relates to proximity to a residential property. You know, this is, the ZBA would be an involved agency, and the planning board, being lead agency, has to make a seeker determination prior to the ZBA being able to grant any variances. That said, though, we do feel that it is appropriate that the applicant appear before the ZBA to present their project and, you know, make their case, and also get some buy-in from the ZBA one way or the other about the variances that are on the table. So, and with that, as it relates to traffic comments, I would defer to Mark Petaro. We do have him here from JMC this evening.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Mark.
Good evening. As this applicant had stated, we did do a review of their revised analysis, and we did have some minor comments. As you mentioned, the accident data, we're waiting to receive that analysis, but they just received the data. A lot of it was related to traffic signal timing, the input and the analysis related in the traffic study itself. There are some minor improvements as far as related to the site plan comments that we had mentioned. Some additional restriping along Southgate Drive to incorporate the double yellow line, and some arrow markings as well on there. Also, there's still a slight encroachment on the Southgate Drive curb on the opposite side of the driveway to look at that. And then also the crosswalk across Southgate Drive we had a comment in there about showing a ramp on the receiving end or the bus stop end of that intersection, which isn't shown on there. I don't believe there is one on that end, so that would need to obviously be provided to provide the ADA accessibility. But those are a synopsis pretty much of our comments on the application so far.
All right, thanks. All right, let's go around the board for additional comments.
Don, do you have any comments?
Any engineering?
Only one comment about the SWIP, whether it's needed or not, and I think you could probably resolve this fairly easily by talking to Andy Learn over at the office and getting together with him, and I think you'll be able to get around the SWIP requirement entirely.
Okay. Is it under an acre disturbance, or?
I think so. When all's said and done, yes.
Interestingly enough, too, the EAF still identifies, I think, the .92, but what was provided in the most recent submittal identifies .85. So do you know which number we're going with?
I don't know, but I can get that information.
Okay.
I'll clarify.
It's a previously all blacktop site as it is.
Right.
Anyway, so. All right, thanks, Don. Start with Joan.
I don't have any comments or questions.
Looking at the traffic flow diagram, the northbound traffic coming into the site, that turn on Southgate, it looks like the path has them coming around into the outbound lane on Southgate before they turn in. Am I misreading that?
The truck route?
The
The
truck
truck,
route.
the truck, large truck.
There is a line here that we call the center lane line, so looks like he is right.
Could you take
Oh,
the
the
microphone?
Oh, yeah.
Take it, there's a.
The portable one there.
It's a handheld, yeah.
Just got to turn it on.
Turn it on and wait,
Pull it.
count to 5.
There you go.
Hello?
Yep.
There you go.
Okay. So there is a lane line noted on the print. So the outgoing is, you're talking about the ingoing, correct? That's the outgoing. So the outgoing, they do cross the lane to get to.
Well, they want to be on the other side going in.
Correct. I think we just had to adjust where this truck is shown on the road. I think he's actually showing it on the wrong side to turn, so we'll clean that up.
Yeah, I'm just concerned if those big trucks are going to have to swing left before they can turn right.
That's correct, yes.
That's still part of the design?
Yeah, it's going to have to be with the size of Southgate and where the entrance is.
So there's no accommodation where you could have the entrance, instead of a right turn, more of a 45-degree angle, come in without having to make this wide
Typically,
swing?
DOT wouldn't approve an entrance that would be kind of an odd shape or odd width, so that would be part of their review, but they have approved this conceptually, the letter that we got this week.
But you have something like that coming south, right? The large truck entrance coming southbound?
It's a typical size entrance. That's a right in, right out on 9.
Well, the diagram kind of shows them going in at an angle as opposed to 90 degrees.
Well,
It depends on which truck one is accessing the building, so that could come in more at 90 degrees, but where the gas tanks are located, that's why the truck comes in at an angle, to drop the gasoline at the tanks.
Yeah, there's two different diagrams.
Two different trucks.
Yeah, but it appears, more of a non-right angle entrance coming off Southgate wouldn't be any different from the one coming southbound on Route 9. But you said the DOT already approved it.
Yes.
All right. Nicole?
Other than the signage that you have already on the plans, are you proposing any other signage?
We have 2 signs on the building, one on each side, and we have the freestanding sign that has also the gas and diesel display. On each dispenser, there's a pump topper which also has the pricing. That is supposed to be LED also. That is all of the signage. No signage on the canopy.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Peter, go to you next.
The only comment I have is I've heard a lot of chatter about new stewards on Route 9. People seem to be very excited about it, so welcome to the town of Poughkeepsie, and good luck.
And Ben?
I have nothing.
All right. My 2 cents is, I appreciate you put the sidewalk and crosswalk in there. I don't know if there's a way to buffer it a little bit further from Route 9. If you can manage that, that would be good.
Okay, we'll look
Feel
into
more
it.
comfortable to walk We're asking that on some other projects as well. And to Kristen's comment, if you can do a quick visit to the ZBA because there is quite a few zoning issues here. They
Okay.
won't be able to rule on it, as you say, without the seeker, but if you can visit and get some feel for it, we don't want you to keep going, make sure it's a viable project. We hope it is, but there are some significant issues, such as the 500-foot setback, and that we have to make sure they take their look at it.
Okay, we'll do that.
Yep.
I move that the planning board defer further action on this application and direct the applicant to respond to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, including but not limited to the following 1 through 8.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to defer. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, thanks.
Thank you very much.
For your updates and. Are you doing any out of orders in here?
Yeah, we're doing that really sections out of order.
Yes. What do you want to do?
So mobile first.
Right.
There was a request from the applicant engineers if we could swap the next two items. Is Mike Bodendorf here? Oh, I'm sorry, there you are, okay. Is that, you don't need to?
Okay.
Okay, then we'll go with us.
Okay. Then next up is Capilino subdivision on 655 Vassar Road, secret review and subdivision review for a proposed subdivision of an existing lot into 2 lots.
Whose computer is this here?
That's the
That's the
That's
town.
probably the town computer if you need
Can I
to.
just unplug from it and plug it
Yes,
into mine?
certainly.
Yep.
Another applicant wanted to use the town computer, so.
Hi, I'm Eric Rogie from Hudson Land Design.
Eric?
Figured we'd give an update since the last time we were here. I believe we got the variance for the lot area. So
Okay.
all other quantities for zoning are met, other than the area, so that looks good. We went over all the comment letters that we received, and none of those comments look like deal breakers. They're a little bit of cleanup, that type of stuff. So we don't see any, big things there.
Okay. You adjusted the lot line a little bit, it's looking straightforward.
Yeah.
All right. Kristen?
Okay, so as was indicated, it's relatively straightforward. The applicant has already received the necessary variance to proceed with the application as is proposed. I just had a couple of quick comments. We, as town staff, looked into the SHPO CRIS system, and we're just seeking essentially a no-effect letter from SHPO that is indicated in my letter as part of
Okay.
seeker. We will be circulating to them for lead agency intent. However, we do leave it to the applicant to reach out. If you need subsequent input from the town, we can also submit a letter or help you through that process, but that's based on our review of the system, it's indicating that there are some archaeological sites in the area, but not immediately adjacent to the site. I also just had a couple of comments which essentially boil down to the applicant is asking for a few waivers of information, which they have the ability or they are able to request the waiver of that information. I have listed that information in your review letter. And if when the time comes that you wish to proceed with that waiver, we will do a formal resolution for that process. So at this time, staff is recommending the adoption of a seeker lead agency intent and deferring action on the application.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. Likely no engineering issues on this.
No, I think we've agreed to everything that needs to be done.
All right. Let's go around the board then. Peter?
I have a question for the town engineer.
Okay.
Are we okay with the site distance on Vassar Road? No issues there?
Yes.
Ben?
I'm okay.
Nicole?
I have nothing.
Bob?
Nothing.
And Joe?
I have nothing.
And the question was the variances. Sounds like you got that, so looks like we're good to go with it.
I move that the planning board declare its intent to be lead agency, coordinate the environmental review of the proposed project as an unlisted action, and authorize the planning department circulation of a notice of said intent, a copy of the EAF, and a copy of the application to the identified involved agencies.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
I move that the planning board defer action on this application pending the establishment of a lead agency and direct the applicant to respond in writing to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, included but not limited to the following 1 through 7.
Second. Moved and seconded. Called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, you're well on your way. We got the lead agency circulation, and
Okay.
after that's complete, go through the approval process.
Okay, is it possible to schedule a public hearing for the next meeting? Or would that be?
You don't actually have to,
We don't have to?
set that in advance, so when you submit your response to comments that you've received, just add a line in that letter, the cover letter, identifying that you wish to be put on for public hearing,
Okay,
and we'll get that noticed.
all right, great.
All right.
Anything else?
You're good to go for now.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Next up is Mobile Station at 3480 North Road, Mid-Hudson Center. Site plan review for the existing gasoline service station and convenience store with the addition of a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through access. It's zoned FC Fairview Center, and it's a type 2 action. PFS Mid-Hudson LLC is the owner. Welcome.
Good evening. Mike Bodendorf, Hudson Land Design Engineers for the applicant. Also here with some representatives of the applicant, Thomas Kevitt and Paul Jean. We received comment letters from Planning, Zoning, the Fire District, Water and Sewer, Department of Health, and AKRF for Traffic and Engineering. I perused those comments. I don't see anything that's show-stopping. And just to, we do have a traffic study in hand.
Okay.
We will be looking over that, making sure we addressed all the comments that we have and make modifications as necessary and get that back in. Since the last time we saw you, we added landscaping to the wall to sort of soften the drive-through as it comes across the west side of the building. Do we have that graphic on there? We have a combination of hedgerows and shrubs, and we'll illustrate those in some renderings as well as a cross-sectional diagram. I don't feel any need that we need to really review any of these comments here. There's a bunch. We'll address them, and I guess just to acknowledge, we are going to look at the connector road to Winslow Gate Road. We'll coordinate that with the Hudson Heritage folks, and we'll come up with a solution for that.
Okay, good. Yeah, that was one of my concerns, and that the traffic study takes that, that project into account as well.
Right.
All right, Eric?
Let's see. Well, you have the comments. I guess the other thing I'll point out is that since the staff recommendation was prepared, the zoning administrator determined that the use is permitted, but it is going to be subject to a special use permit application, so for the next submittal, we'll need to get a copy of that special use permit application. There is also some question about the location of improvements and the role of the applicant versus the underlying parcel owner, since the site consists of a lease area. And the preliminary determination is that it would be appropriate for the underlying parcel owner to be a party to the application. So in addition to the owner, so we're, although it's not in here, it would be advisable to get not only the consents for the application as proposed, but also the underlying owner consent, and if possible, to be a party to the application.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Let's go around the board for now. Start with Peter.
The last meeting we had, I expressed a concern about the traffic flow here. People coming into the Dunkin' Donuts, coming out, turning south onto the internal driveway, and then turning west, going out to the light on Route 9. And my concern was about queuing. Now, did the traffic study that you had address that issue?
Yes,
Okay.
and if it didn't address it, we will address that.
Yeah, we want to take a look at that because
I haven't had a chance to review the traffic impact study, to the full extent.
it's
but-
actually pretty tight. Want you to sell a lot of donuts, and consequently, you're going to have a lot of traffic. So we just want to make sure that we don't jam up that internal road.
Sure.
The other thing is if there are any encroachments, we want to be made aware of them,
Mhm.
and we'll address them. That's it. Thank you.
Peter. Ben?
Just is this strictly a drive-through, or can they go inside and get donuts too?
Well, you can go inside, but it's mainly set up for the drive-through. There'll be probably a few tables, but it's mostly set up for the drive-through. But you can walk in, get coffee, donuts as well. Probably people getting gas, they might walk in and get a coffee, and there'll also be convenience items in there as well.
Okay.
Joe?
I have no comments, no questions.
Bob? Nothing. And Nicole?
Can you tell me where the loading area is?
We're still working that through, but I believe it's going to be on the, the east side of the building. That's where they fill up the tanks. There is a door on that side of the building, and it sort of goes to the back of the building behind, where the customers are.
Is that going to be in the way of the drive-through?
I think a loading truck, not so much. Maybe filling gas tanks, it could impede the drive-through temporarily. If we had a new site to work with, we'd probably be able to make that a better situation there.
I've seen Dunkin' Donut trucks be the full WB 40 or whatever. Is
Mhm.
that the case? So they have to maneuver in there as well for the loading.
Mhm.
Is that it?
Yeah, that was it, thank you.
I guess you already answered, Ben had the same question about service inside, so that goes to making sure there's enough parking for people to do that. But if you think it's
Mhm.
sufficient for the people just coming in for gas, but if there's people coming there specifically to park and go in for Dunkin' Donuts, that's an
Right.
additional parking requirement. Eric, is there any lack of parking to code, or?
They meet code required parking.
Okay.
We exceed it, right?
That's goodness. And just wondering what you're doing for screening of the drive-through, the wall. I know that there's a broken down piece of the wall there now, and I guess you're going to repair that, and as well as move the wall a little bit on the north side.
Yeah, so.
Can you just say what you're doing there and screening the drive-through perhaps with plantings or something?
Yeah, we have a combination of hedgerows, what are those? Boxwoods. Boxwoods, chokeberries, they'll all grow to about 4 feet in height and be manicured so that they don't get too tall.
Okay.
But that'll sort of screen the cars above the wall.
Yep.
And we'll illustrate how that looks from Route 9 with the wall and the height of the wall,
Okay,
and give
yeah,
more
that
detail on all of that.
'cause it's up on the hill as well, so.
Yeah.
So that'll help.
Mhm.
Okay, good. I did notice, when I was on site, looks like a small AC compressor in the northwest corner of the building. That's not really depicted on the plans, that you're going to have to move out of the way of the drive-through.
Right. We'll deal with that.
And last comment goes to lighting. You would try to keep lighting under 3,000 Kelvin for temperature these days. So I don't know what kind of wall packs or things you're planning for the drive-through or elsewhere, so.
The wall packs will definitely be LED.
Yeah, so that we don't want like 5,000, 6,000.
Right, yeah, you don't
LED
want
kind of thing.
stadium lights there.
Right, exactly.
We'll make sure they comply with the code, and we'll check the existing lights as well.
Okay, thanks.
Just a quick question. How high are the boxwoods going to be? The boxwoods, do you have, and your landscaping plan, how high are the boxwoods going to be?
4 feet.
So planted, they'll be 4 feet, because they're very slow growing. In other words, if you planted a 2-foot high boxwood, it would take years for that to achieve 4 feet in height. That's why I asked you. The other thing is, do you get copies of the county comments?
We did not get that was, Eric mentioned we did get comments from the county. That was the only thing we didn't get a copy of. He did mention, though, that those, I think they were requesting that the drive-through lane be merged into one lane as it exits.
Their comments were your application lacked a photometric plan, building elevations, and a signage plan. I just wanted to make sure that you got that. We can share that with them.
That was just recently received.
Yeah.
Just came in today,
Great.
so get that to you.
Thanks.
We'll provide all that detail.
Forewarned is forearmed.
Yep.
Mike, on the next time around, the board mentioned a couple times about in-store service and outdoor service, and the zoning administrator identified it as a restaurant drive-through. So next time, could you just find some way in the plan to label like what the seating, the restaurant area within the building is?
Sure. Yeah, we are getting updated interior plans. The one that we have on one of the sheets, I think it shows up on one of the sheets, or may not. It's a little lacking of detail, but it's going to be brought up to speed.
Great, thank you.
And just to touch back on loading, there's flexibility on when loading can take place, so it doesn't interfere with peak times of, people getting in there, getting coffee in the morning. So we'll work through those details as well.
We may keep that in mind because the Home Depot, I think they open at 7 o'clock. So there's going to be traffic there probably,
Very early, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I assume some of those contractors going to Home Depot will pick up coffee as well, so.
Sure.
I think they'll be happy about that.
Last comment I have is, you're rebuilding that wall and everything, but you are trying to keep a bunch of those trees on the outside, so make sure there's a good tree protection in place there to
Sure.
keep the equipment and stones away from the roots.
I move that the planning board defer further action on this application and direct the applicant to respond to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, included but not limited to the following 1 through 11.
Moved and seconded. Called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Good to go. We'll see you
Thank you.
next time. Next up, patiently waiting, Eastdale Village. Donald Heights Town Center. For a 7th Amendment to the previously approved mixed-use Eastdale Village project. Do you need a screen or anything to? Jeff, do you need a screen to present or do anything, or you just?
Yes, there we go. All right.
You got it, okay.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Kane with Mid-Hudson Development LLC.
Giovanni Palladino.
I just wanted to give a brief overview of the proposal that we have here in our seventh amendment to the site plan. Just, I guess, first off, just to, if this is on, just to locate where the proposed improvements are, 44 East L Avenue and the Premier Urology Medical Building, which is open in the back here. We're proposing amendments to what's called the B block, the B buildings here, and so we'll refer to the B buildings. But that's really where we're limited to our proposed improvements in this application. You can see the blow up of the B building on the screen in front of you here, and it looks very much like the original. That's the original configuration, and what you have in front of you is the proposed configuration. Again, very similar. It's a rectangle. It initially was just under 12,500 square feet. It was 12,468. Mixed use. I had 3-story, 1 floor of commercial and 2 floors of residential, with 4 units on the second and third floor. We've redesigned that building. It's now the world headquarters of Kirchhoff Properties. We're proposing to move into the second floor of the building there. So again, a two-story building. First floor have 4 commercial tenants. Again, the gross square feet is a little smaller, 12,143 square feet, but no residential is proposed in this building. We've gone from 3 stories to 2, but again, because of the size of the building, the architecture of the building, which we can talk about later, it will really present as a 3-story building in terms of its height there, because we're between 34 and 36 feet to the peak of that building there. So again, we think it'll have a nice presence on East L Avenue within the project. Some slight adjustments to the lot as the footprint got a little bigger. We have, again, we're a little closer on some of the sidelines than previous, and again, I think that's all consistent with the zone and with the board's ability to vary the setbacks, and so we're looking for those approvals. And because we've shifted some of the residential buildings and some of the commercial uses, again, there's no overall change in the project in terms of gross square feet, number of units. All that remains constant. We've programmatically shifted those uses and those square footage to other of the undesigned buildings within the site, and kept within our the overall caps as they were reviewed in the secret documents. Minor changes in the utility. We have a little shorter of a sewer line. We've added a grease trap. Again, very minor, but certainly for review. We've changed the lighting a little bit, and I had Eric and I had a conversation this afternoon on lighting, and actually I think it was a good conversation. I talked to the lighting rep this afternoon and made some. We had some good conversations. If I can talk about that at any level of detail you want to, but we've taken the pole lights out of the sidewalk behind the building, added those onto the proposed to mount those on the side of the building, and again made some further changes there to make it even I think better. But I can talk about that if you have questions about what we've talked about to really improve the lighting, I think, on that rear of the building. And we've kept wide sidewalks as much as possible around the building. On the front, we're 15 feet wide. In the back, we're 8, and 10 on both sides. One of the comments that we saw was that we eliminated some of the foundation plantings, and there was a request to perhaps add those back in. We would like to not add those foundation plantings back in, because even though we have 8 feet on the 2 ends of the building, really only have about 6 feet to the tree wells or to the lighting that's on those. I'll shift to the landscape plan here. Gotcha. And so by adding foundation plantings along the ends of the building, we would kind of squeeze that area. We'd rather it be open, and we'd look for some relief from that comment that we saw. And I think that's it. Again, any questions or comments that you may have, we'd be happy to address.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Eric?
I think let's see. I think Jeff summarized the issues pretty well. There weren't too many. We're recommending, we have some resolutions for the board to find it consistent with the previous environmental reviews and to grant a conditional approval. We have no objection to relief from the plantings. We posed it as a question rather than as a condition. And I did have a good discussion with Jeff in lighting, and again, if the board wants to discuss it, they can, or I'm comfortable with what they come up with.
As long as it's not too high a Kelvin temperature.
No, we've kept the Kelvin the same, so that's, yeah.
All right. That's our latest concern. All right, let's, anything engineering, Don? No. All right. Let's go around the board. Start with Joan this time.
The picture that I'm looking at, it doesn't show an extension of the roof line on, I don't know what side it is, but in the application paperwork that I have in front of me, it does. So I'm just wondering which is the correct rendering.
Extension of the roof line.
Yeah, the profile is different on the paperwork in here with the, like, canopies or something that comes out from the building.
Right, I think the old application, we were showing canopies. We may have canopies on this one as well, but they weren't on the site plan as submitted. I don't think any of these views have the canopies. But yeah, we may end up with canopies over some of those entrances.
Yeah, the paperwork we have in front of us, it shows the canopies, that's what she's saying. That's what she's talking about.
Yeah, it's different. In the architecture, you're showing canopies.
Oh, and the architecture, okay, yes, the architecture does show.
Just to clarify, I think what Joan's looking at is we provided a snapshot from the Sixth Amendment site plan. And on the Sixth Amendment site plan, it shows the canopies or an overhang. And the proposed condition does not show that.
Right, that's correct. So, yeah, and this is the architecture, and so we are showing canopies there for at least some of the users. So the canopies may end up on the site, but those aren't part of the footprint, which is why we kind of took them off of the site plan view of the site, so.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Sure.
Bob? Nicole?
Nothing, I just, obviously with the increase of the building, you do have a decrease in landscape, but as you said, you probably want to keep that open for pedestrian walking and so forth. And I don't know if your tenants are going to have any outside seating like Crafted Cup or Pizza Posto, but if so, they probably would want a little bit of that space so that they could maybe put up a couple of tables and whatnot.
Right. We would expect there'd be some tables and chairs out there, and that'd be for the kind of grab and go uses. Sure.
Right.
Yeah,
So, okay.
Right. Ben?
Okay.
And Peter?
Your comments, the site plan review comments, the development program, parking, and other tables appeared not to have been corrected from the Sixth Amendment site plan application to remove changes associated with the unapproved Ortega House lot addition to Eastdale Village. Data therein and the revised density allocation table should be corrected and verified as needed to correspond to the proposed Seventh Amendment program.
I actually reviewed that with Jeff this afternoon, and at least from a quick look at the tables, at least the tables that are on the plan, it looks like they have been corrected. You could leave the comment, because I didn't review again the density tables, and they're going to be subject to a revised submittal anyways. So I think the numbers do work out, and if you leave that comment in, I'll double check them on the final submittal.
When you have a chance to give it a slow look.
Yeah, and I, as I said to Eric, I think the submittal was misleading because I think the numbers are right, but I left the Ortega line in the table, but it doesn't have any values next to it, and I think it looked like it didn't update the table, and so that was my.
I know. I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken.
Happens on occasion. Is that it, Peter?
Yes, thank you.
My comment is, on page 4 of your submittal, you do mention the second floor has 2 equal-sized tenants for 3,025 square foot each, but your plans show it differently.
Yeah, right. that was done before I had
before you had it.
before I had the
Before you
floor
had a
plan
tenant.
done, so for the purpose of.
Yeah,
you know,
just to.
Yeah, right, estimated, but we'll have the square footage is the same, it's being divided a
Yep.
little differently, and that's still subject to some.
I guess it wasn't clear to me that the stairways, how they came, but I guess from the, they look, you have the stairways upstairs, but the downstairs looks like they're trouncing on top of some of the other features in there, so.
Right, you want to address how the stairs work?
There's areas of the staircase where we're actually incorporating the space under the stair and providing it to our retail tenants. So because the plate heights are so high, there's actual usable space under the staircases. So we're actually, like, for instance, Pizzeria Posto, they will use it to store their wood or
Okay.
maybe their flour.
Something,
So-
okay. That's why it looked like the stairs are on top of the,
If you noticed, when we looked at their, the residential part, they did the same thing. You guys did the same thing.
Right.
I remember that, yeah.
okay. It just looking at it caught me off guard there.
We're just trying to capture all the square footage that we can.
Sounds good. And, all right, you're losing the landscaping. I mean, an idea, I don't know if you have thought about it for the whole project, that some areas I've seen some sidewalk planters, a big bowl and flowers or whatever, just another method to beautify the main street coming in. But you've got quite a bit of landscaping already.
We've, I'll use benches as an example. There are benches on the plan. I don't know that our benches are going to end up where they are on the plan, but we're going to have benches on the site as it continues to build out. And they're going to go in areas where it really makes sense. We've certainly talked about planters as well, and I think, again, as we build out, you're going to see planters on the site where we think it adds something in a corner that makes a lot of sense. So I agree with you. They're a good idea. We certainly have thought about it. They're just part of the furniture we think of on a site like
Right.
this. It'll get added as it grows.
Yep. Turn into a nice main street.
Thanks.
All right. At this point, I move that we waive the site plan public hearing for this project.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Go ahead with the others.
I move that the planning board find the action contemplated by the Eastdale Village 7th amended site plan submittal is consistent with the seeker finding statement for the McDonald Heights Town Center as adapted March 15, 2018. And I move that the planning board grant conditional amended site plan approval for the Eastdale Village 7th amended site plan, subject to the following. Respond to comments of all reviewing departments and agencies, said responses to be reviewed by the planning department as to adequacy and completeness included but not limited to the following 1 through 10D.
Moved and seconded to grant conditional, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. You conduct architectural review, I see it up on the board.
We are prepared for architectural review, yes, sir.
So the architectural style still follows that traditional pattern that we've been using through Eastdale, and the materials are also similar to the other Main Street buildings. So the lower level with a 12-foot plate height is where the storefronts are. That's going to be made out of the cementatious trim color. In this color here, they call aged pewter. So that dark color. The windows will actually have the old type of style of hand-painted lettering in the glass. To try to, again, to emphasize that feeling of a Main Street. The awnings are something that we just threw in just to give you a visualization if somebody wants to have a retractable or an awning of that type, like an old style awning that you would have seen at the turn of the 20th century, at the beginning of the 20th century. So the spaces are divided to feel like separate storefronts as they are. The second floor, as Jeff has mentioned, will be the Kirchhoff World Headquarters. This is actually at the conference room right here, overlooking the green. And the windows will be black. The roof is the same type of shingle we've been using, the rustic black. and the upper siding is the cementatious hardy
board.
in the white. We did add some brick elements here at the pier with some lighting to emphasize the brick, and this is a small sample of the brick. It's actually a molded brick, it's not a cut brick, so it feels more like a handmade product. And then we're adding some brackets because the overhangs are a little bit larger, again, give that scale to the building.
They're just kind of metal brackets, or?
No, they're gonna be out of wood.
Or wood, okay.
Yeah. Along what we did on the Premier building. I don't know if you saw those brackets on there.
Gotcha.
This is the side here that's actually facing Building A. This would be our entrance here to the second floor. As you can see, we can take that storefront, we continue it right around the corner. Some lead signs for wayfinding. And then this would be the back here. Again, Hardy on the lower level, Hardy on the upper level. And then we just cut the roof back in here to hide all the equipment that will be up on the roof. So it's kind of hollowed out. It's exactly what we did with Premier on the roof.
Okay, great. Anyone have any architectural comments?
Yeah, I think it looks great.
Yep, I think it looks right. I think the awnings would be a great useful thing, especially if they're putting a couple tables out there to be out of the weather under the awnings. So, I move we accept the architecture as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Good luck again. See you next month.
Jeff is in line.
Right, next up is Item Equities Incorporated at 23 Davis Avenue, discussion of a potential subdivision to allow 2 existing buildings to be on their own independent parcels with regard to traffic flow and parking requirements of the existing site plan and special use permit. Zoned ATC Arlington Town Center.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kenneth M. Stenger. I'm representing the attorney for the project, the engineer for the project. Brian Stakos had a family emergency, so he's left me on my own tonight, so I try not to make things generally worse. Actually, my assignment here in this case was to do something that was perhaps creative. So your board has seen this project, and I've read your review. And when I first met Dr. Modi, I was on table, my eye was over here, but I read the review. I mean, I read the approval, special use permit approval. I read the site plan approval. And Dr. Modi came to me and he said, look, can we subdivide this piece of land into the 2 buildings? Because it's an economically better, more viable use of the property. But can we do that in the context of what's already been approved? Because, as was explained to me at length, and what I confirmed when I read Special Condition 6 of the special use permit, at that particular location, it was clear, I didn't participate in those proceedings, but what I'm reading is that there is a significant concern for traffic and parking at that location. I mean, the condition is very specific, and it's aimed at that problem, and it's not, and basically, what, as I understood what I was reading, was that the board said, look, we can do this at that location, but we need to monitor this and make sure that you don't abuse it, you don't overload it, you don't bring in too many people, and we're trying to strike this is the way I read it, I don't mean if I'm misinterpreting it, but we're trying to strike the balance between folks who live in that neighborhood, your ability to do this business at that location, and where we meet in conflict is parking. How many people can you put in that parking lot? And can you promise us it'll never get bigger? That's the way I understood this.
Yes.
And so my job was not to argue the merit of that. It's very clear what I read. But would there be a way that I could present to anybody that if this land were subdivided into 2 parcels, that the concerns expressed in not the concerns expressed, that the mechanisms for dealing with a recognized concern of parking at that site could be preserved? And I think I'm fairly enough familiar with the fact that once a piece of land gets one approval, such as the one that you clearly labored over, worked hard to come up with a creative solution, there can be almost a reverse inertia. Wow, we spent so much time doing this. I don't think we really want to see this piece of land again. And so what I did was I assumed I was asked to do a task, and that was, could I devise something that would be legally available to this board to assure the public that it represents that if this parcel were subdivided into two different parcels, that the mechanism that you have created to monitor the parking at that location would survive that subdivision approval. And what I did was, the first thing I did was I sent an email to Eric, and I wanted to talk because I didn't understand everything that happened. So I came up here, we looked at the file together, we talked it through, and it was very clear. What I was reading here, now I was hearing. This is a big issue. This parking is a big issue. So what I did was I didn't think from a lawyer's point of view, not necessarily from the planning board's point of view, that the mechanism was that difficult to put together. Because you can, through covenants and restrictions, I think, create a system that would allow this parcel to be subdivided into two parcels that would keep the conditions of the special use permit in place, and additionally would be able to put teeth into the monitoring of the mechanism whereby the parking use of the facility would be monitored and managed. And so I drafted a document, and I drafted a document which it assumed that usually what happens with me is people will go get a subdivision, and the planning board will say, well, I want to see this document, this document, this document. But I thought, given this circumstance, that the planning board might wish to see the document before they even considered seeing the application, because if there was no feasible means to address this issue, you may not wish to really look at the application. But there is a feasible means, I believe, and I've submitted it for review with Mr. Holman and Ms. Kopp. And it's simply this. If you were to consider a subdivision application, and if you were to approve it, so I'm just making those two assumptions, then any condition of that approval, a condition of that approval, would have to be the imposition of covenants and restrictions for the benefit of each lot and for the benefit of the town. And I don't know if copies of that document have been circulated, so then you've seen what I've done. What I've done is created cross easements for the parking areas so that the current traffic flow that you've looked at and approved does not change. There's no interference arising from the potential subdivision of the single parcel into two. In other words, there's no ability for one owner to cut off access to the parking from another owner. It would all function the same.
It's a big concern.
The second part is that condition 6 remains in full force and effect, and it now, parcel 1, parcel 2, and the town all have an independent basis for enforcing that section 6 within the ownership of the subdivided parcels. And the last piece gives each owner the right, because I was just thinking this, all right, so maybe the way this is constituted with the current occupants and the current business, this will work, but now what do we do if somebody wants to bring in some other use, an accountant's office or too many lawyers? So I think, quite frankly, that would affect the approval from the town's perspective. But if you were the owner of lot number 1 or lot number 2, and your business plan was dependent on the stability of what you've already approved, that it would seem to me that in order to get that, if you owned lot number 2 and you wanted to change it from whatever it is now to another, you'd have an affirmative obligation not only to the town, but to the other lot owner that your proposed use would not increase the demand on parking because the parking at that site is finite. So what I try to do, and I'm not suggesting that the document I've given you is the document, because every document can be approved, but my concept was there is a way to manage this, and it can be done, and it's not terribly complex, and we can subdivide without losing the integrity of the existing parking. We can subdivide without losing the integrity of the condition of your approval, and we can subdivide really to protect the people who buy those lots, who really will depend more on the maximum capacity of that parking than anyone else, give them the teeth to do it as well. That adds a third layer of protection in there that is in addition to what's already been imposed by the board. That's my idea. That's why I'm here to not ask you, to ask you to consider that in advance as a condition of a subdivision approval. You might entertain the application and let the engineers and
All right.
the applicant explain why that makes sense, because that's not my department.
We'll discuss it.
So that's it.
Yep, new building looks nice, by the way.
I'm sorry, I didn't
The
hear
new
you.
building looks nice. It
That's
came
why
out-
we say
came
thank
out-
you.
Came out
Yes.
well. But, yeah, parking was a concern going in because Dr. Moda does a good business, and the neighbors had some issues, so. We go to Eric. See what he.
I think Ken has actually outlined it pretty well, that the issue is not so much the technicalities of subdivision, and the board often, in a previous application, in fact, deals with circumstances where there's cross-access and shared parking. That's not uncommon for a site plan.
Right.
He's also correct in the fact that the parking, in this case, was not a function not only of the site plan, but of the special use permit conditions because of the unique relationship of the shared uses of, in this case, the two buildings and their potential effects upon the neighborhood. That was the focus of discussion during the site plan and special use permit review, and the solution were these special use permit conditions. And it's just, I'm not familiar with special use permit conditions such as this being applied across to different owners on different parcels. And so the planning board attorney, I'm going to ask her to comment on the adequacy of the document, and maybe I'll just add to it, is it, it's technical adequacy, but also it's practical adequacy for the board in terms of its intent.
All right, thanks, Eric. Lisa?
So, 3 points. The first is that as a general concept, we think that the document that was prepared by Mr. Stanger would work. Obviously, there would be tweaks and edits to it. But secondly, I think that the approval would need to be also with the town board. And I question whether you would want to have, because if it's an agreement that binds the town, it's outside the purview of what this board can do. So prior to submitting an application, you may want to have that discussion, at least with counsel for the town board, if not the town board itself. We circulated this to them when it came in, but I don't know that I've received a response from Jim Nelson from the town. And so I'm offering that as something the applicant may want to do. And then the third thing that the board will want to consider is, because this is just on for discussion tonight, there hasn't been any analysis by the zoning administrator. So we don't know whether any variances would be needed, any other issues would be raised by the subdivision. I'm assuming there were variances granted previously for the setbacks for the building, so that shouldn't be an issue. But whether anything else would be triggered by the subdivision, we just don't know yet. But in general, as a concept, it looks like it'll work.
All right, great, thanks.
You're welcome.
It is an unusual situation because of the lack of.
No, I understand that.
The parking in that area. All right, let's go around the board. Joan?
I don't have any real comments, except that I think there might be a typo, and I know this agreement is still subject to lots of changes, in the easement in paragraph 2.
Let me,
I
let me
think the
just
second
pull-
reference to benefit should be burden, that's all. That's all. That's really my only comment.
Where was the typo? I'm
It's
sorry.
on page 2, paragraph 2, and this is where the reciprocal easements are created. But on the third line, the word benefit, I think should be burden, if I'm reading it correctly.
Oh, I think you probably should. Yep, that's correct.
Mutually burdens the.
I think. Thank you.
That's it.
Good pickup. All right, thanks, Joe. Bob?
Nothing else.
Nicole?
Nothing, really, just, with your approvals, originally, parking and traffic were a big problem. So, again, we'll just have to make sure that that's in condition, in the approval with this particular document, with the dividing of this particular lot into 2 lots. I'll have to make sure that there is no increase in parking or traffic.
All right, Ben?
I have no comment at this time. Wait for more information.
Okay, and Peter?
We spend a lot of time on this special use permit, which stipulates there will be no increase in doctors or staff. Proposed new structure will have little or no effect on vehicular or pedestrian traffic and will not cause any assembly of persons. This condition will be met. It's not really, the problem with the future is we don't know what's going to happen. And we've looked at parking cross easements before. It was always with an individual owner. And I would want to see some kind of surety for the town that we don't get dragged into a dispute between the parties to this type of agreement. And right now, I don't see it. So if somebody has an idea, I'll be glad to listen, want to accommodate you.
I'd be happy to.
I'm just making a list of things that we have to respond to, and I think it's important that I have that list and we can incorporate that into the document. But I want to say, look, this is my best shot on my own in this process. You want comments, and I think the concern, in my view, that I was trying to address was to show you a viable means by which to preserve your present conditions of parking and monitoring at that site. I'm sure I did not address every concern at this board, but if you were to entertain the application, and through that process, I think by the end of it, I'll know exactly what it is you want, because...
Well, let me finish. One of the concerns I think that we would have is that there's an increased intensity of use in either building 1 or building 2, and how are we going to address that? We don't want to get dragged into a dispute between 2 property owners over parking cross easements. So we want to come up with some language that protects our position, as well as yours.
No. That's, look, I understand. Where you don't want to be is having somebody come to you and say, you enforce my right. I'll work on that language. But the language that I've created, I think, subject to comment, the intent of it is to preserve the status quo.
I know, but one of the worst words in legal language is intention.
Well,
and
okay.
we don't want to get stuck.
How about this?
We don't want to get stuck with an intent.
The ironclad effect of this language, once perfected, will be to keep everything as is.
That's what you're looking for. One of the first words I would take out of that is intent.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Peter. And Lisa will help keep us honest here, but you do have item 7, no owner of either parcel A or B shall permit any use of either lot that shall increase the demand for parking on the site, and that's one thing that will help with whatever you think.
I mean, one of the real
additionally.
problems we have right now is that both buildings on site are proposed to be used for Dr. Modi's practice. And so there really isn't room on the site now to have something other than Dr. Modi's practice on site. So if you get to the point where one of the buildings there's an attempt to use it for something else, that's a problem under the present configuration, unless Dr. Modi's business has somehow lessened in some way or spun off or something. So that's one of the things that we'll need to address with this document.
Okay. Yep. It was all
I
predicated.
wouldn't hesitate to let Dr. Modi speak.
Oh, I just
because
wanted to
last time we were here, we had a room full of residents, of his neighbors, and within 5 minutes, he cast a spell.
I wanted to make sure we had all the comments before Dr. Modi did speak. And so I think we've gone around the table. Dr. Modi?
When we spoke about the special permit, I kind of explained that the original building that's on the left side of this property, which is 12,600 square feet, half of that is occupied by my office. That's all been vacated and moved to the new building on the right side of the property. So effectively, the lower half of that building is at this point empty. The upper half, the north half, if you will, of the old building is occupied not by my practice, but by something called Duchess Ambulatory Surgery Center, which is a multi-specialty surgery center, which has multiple doctors, some of whom you may know. Premier Urology is in there. There's a bunch of other physicians who operate and work there. And that is, so when we spoke about the special permit, I said that all we needed was more space and more efficiency so patients' throughput would not be affected. And that's why we moved into a larger, more efficient space. And my son has joined the practice. We're going to be there for generations. So that's not going anywhere. That's our building. That's Cedar High. It's not going anywhere. The surgery center, the vacant space is going to be occupied by the surgery center. They're also running out of space. I'm a HHC surveyor, and one of the problems is that you walk into an ambulatory surgery center, and there are stretchers and lasers and stuff, and there's no egress for patients. And we are very tight in the surgery center. So what is happening is that the administrative part of the surgery center is going to move into the vacant space that we have cleared out. So really, the amount of usage of these two properties is at the maximum it will ever be. Mr. Stenger brought in an accountant. It'll never have this kind of volume. All right, we're at the maximum volume of usage right now, and the administrative space is being occupied, is occupying the vacant space in the old building. So the surgery center partners, there are 15 of them, want to buy the building, and this is what has prompted this subdivision. And they're not going anywhere either. They have a 20-year lease with 10 years more.
Okay.
But no matter where anyone goes, no one who comes in will increase the demand for parking at that location. That's the point of the document. So, or the effort of the document. It's not intended. It will have an ironclad absolute effect.
All right, thanks for explaining it.
Thanks for giving us the time. We'd just like to make an application if the board will entertain it.
Yep, sounds like, Lisa recommended you talk to the town board as well first and
Okay.
get their buy-in, and then
All right, great.
get the application in. All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. Good luck.
Good evening. Thank you.
All right, I see Steve waiting over there patiently. Next up is the discussion on Springside Avenue changes by Tinkelman Design. Welcome, guys.
Good evening.
Do you have a presentation, or? Okay.
Here we do.
Get that ready.
I guess I can introduce everybody here,
Sure.
and then we can start, and then have the well, Chris is setting up the presentation. My name is Stephen Tinkelman. I'm the managing member of Tinkelman Architecture. To my right is Evan Smith, and Evan will talk a little later on. He owns a company called the British Swim School, and this company would be one of our lead tenants in the retail space. We're proposing, maybe backing up a little bit, to construct a 4-story building on our site, and the building will consist of, as it's currently thought of, is commercial space on the first floor with apartments on the second, third, and fourth floor of the building. And the building being about 8,000 square feet in plate, half of that will be used by the British Swim School that Evan will talk about a little later in the evening. And then to my right, far right, is Chris Mansfield from Tinkleman Architecture, who is also one of the company architects as well as the head of the technology part of what we do.
Great, thanks, Steve.
So with what we're going to show you is, and maybe we don't have to do this, but because I know it's late, but we're just going to try to recap where we are with the campus currently. There have been some additions since the last time we were here, and then we want to come here to have just a brief introduction to the project. We had a recent meeting with Mr. Welty and members of the planning staff and other staff folk, and Mr. Whitehead came to the meeting as well as the town supervisor, where we came just to introduce some of the ideas that we currently have. The idea generally is to not only put some positives, but open up the conversation, because that's part of our process, is we like to be inclusive and get early feedback in terms of what we're doing.
All right, there we go.
So the first image here, which is kind of a master plan, we're here for just one project, which is, Chris, if you could use the mouse to help me here, is this structure here, which is a proposed 4-story building. Maybe to walk through the campus coming from Van Wagner and the intersection of 4455, our office building, which we're on the second floor. The building has office space on both the first and second floor. There's the Hudson Valley, I'm drawing a blank here. What's that? Well, the Center of Travel uses the 1-story building behind it. There's also a school downstairs, for teaching children that have speech issues and so they're operating in the old Poughkeepsie space. We have a couple of residential structures, 2 that have been converted into residential either apartments, or we've done an upgrade to a single-family home, which is there. Along the 4455, there's another residential structure that currently PVE engineers are operating out of. They're environmental engineers. We subsequently, in the next action, or the next phase, is we came here and did a rezone on the property where there was R20 and there was also BH, and the campus was essentially rezoned to ATC, and this is in 2013, and at that time we did a full environmental for that action. So subsequently to that, on the north side of Springside Avenue, we constructed 2 structures. The building to the left is a 3-story building. It's a mixed-use structure. We're on the first floor. We have the Hudson Valley Healing Center, which has the salt caves in there, and we've just leased out on the left side the remaining space to a company called the Sensory Space, which is owned by Emma Arnoff, and she does therapy work for young children. The building up on the top of the hill, again, 3 stories, is all residential, 16 units. And again, that was part of the action that was approved back in, actually, we came back to the planning board in 14 and 15 for that, or started construction in 2015 for that. Subsequently as part of that action, and as part of the rezone, in the space that we're currently proposing this new building, we proposed a 5-story building that would have 32 dwelling units with about 8,300 square feet on the first floor. To the end of what we're calling the pork chop, we also had another building that was here, and you can see that there is no building that's in this proposal. Interestingly enough, is what we've learned from just operating what we have here is that parking is a lot more complicated, and there's a lot more of a parking need and you probably hear this on every application, than, we imagined. And so we had to, kind of temper, our aggressive plan. And in some way, the building actually fits better on the site by being 1 story lower in any case. But we wanted to make sure, we're not banking on the driverless car, in any time soon, and it impacting what and how things work, in the Hudson Valley. So we want to make sure that we're designing a project that will satisfy the requirements, the functional requirements of what we're proposing in this building. So that proposal includes 8,000 square feet, plus or minus, but it's about 300 square feet less than what was in the seeker document. We're removing the smaller building that was at the bottom of the pork chop, and we're only going to build 21 units in this structure. It also is a reduction in the number of bedrooms by about 20 as well. Other parts of the action are things that we've talked about in the past, is our commitment to trying to make this into a new neighborhood, which then those components that you've seen in Eastdale and other projects, requires us to make this walkable. So there's new sidewalks, there's new street planting, and we're proposing actually to put 13 new parking spaces on Springside Avenue. So part of our process over the last month or so is to have some leadership meetings. One was the first discussion with the town group, as I mentioned earlier. We've subsequently met with our town council person. We've met with the highway superintendent. We've met with some neighbors. One of the neighbors is here tonight. And we've gotten good feedback from those meetings, and also certain understandings, say with Mark Pfeiffer, who's the highway superintendent, about how he'd like to see parking on the street. And we've done this before in front of the center house, and so far it's worked really well, and there's been a real good relationship between. The most tricky part is how do you deal with snow, and we've got a good system working together. So that would be, and there's also a legal document that was part of that approval process that we could use the same form or the same type of document as well. The other parts to the seeker process, and again, I have to submit this to Mike Welty subsequent to this meeting, but I reviewed the document. Obviously, he and the planning staff have to look at this and give their opinion on it, but there were long-form attachments to it, from SHPO, and there were no historic or cultural issues. The a traffic study was done as part of that process, but we've subsequently done more traffic work when we changed the intersection where the light came out and it became a four-way stop, and it seemed angelic the way it was quieting the neighborhood up until about 2 weeks ago, where somebody went through the intersection at 80 miles an hour and hit one of the buildings, and it's really worked out extremely well in terms of quieting the neighborhood and slowing things down. That approval and that change came about when we did the adaptive reuse to 33 Arlington, which is that structure, and you're happy to say that that building is full. With Emma Arnoff coming in and her business, it's really nice to say that we're 100% full here, and hopefully it stays that way. But we're really pleased with what the tenants are doing in the neighborhood and such. Though I still want food here, so that's part of what I'd like to do with the first floor of our new building. So if I can, by introduction, Evan, if he could just say a few things about himself and then about British Swim and get a sense of what he's trying to do here.
Sure. So for any of you that aren't familiar with British Swim School, it is a franchise swim curriculum. They've been developing it over about 40 years, and it's a newer and better way of teaching kids to swim and be safe in and around bodies of water. It's very focused on back floating and safety first. So at the end of the day, our mission is drowning survival and prevention. So over the past 2 years, we've been open here in the Hudson Valley. Our current business model is to rent some smaller hotel pools. We use them a couple of days a week. We're in Fishkill and Newburgh, and we're very close to being able to announce a pool up in Poughkeepsie that we're hoping to be in within the next couple of weeks. But the biggest thing holding us back from teaching more kids to swim is we don't have enough pool capacity at this point. We have wait lists for all of our most popular classes and days and locations. And with the facility that we're planning here with Stephen Tinkelman and his partners, we're very, very excited to build because it's going to give us the capacity we need to teach a lot more kids how to swim and be safe. And then on top of that, just from my prior career was in real estate, did a lot of real estate strategy work, and it just makes me that much more excited for what I'm seeing come together at Van Wagner Place. I'm very excited for the other tenants that are there. I've had meetings with Wheelhouse and Chakra Bowls and Poughkeepsie, not yet. We've met with Emma Arnoff over at the Sensory Room, and just the potential for all of the tenants that are there with British Swim School to just kind of better serve the community and make them healthier and safer. We're really, really excited for what's kind of unfolding ahead of us.
It's kind of becoming a child-centric area as well.
It seems that way, yeah.
Yeah, a lot
Some
of
the
family
business- from the
activities here, which is
businesses.
great.
And on top of that, the location's perfect, because also from the prior career, I do a lot of drive time studies and look at where my customers are coming from and just where Van Wagner Place is located. I'm really excited about its ability to attract my customers from Highland and New Paltz and get up into Hyde Park and really give me access to a much wider market than I'm in now.
Yeah, great.
One of the other things that's wonderful for the neighborhood, and we haven't worked this out yet with the health department, but we're hoping to offer hours for swimming for all of our neighbors and such that, live in the Van Wagner campus here. And also part of it is to do some health and wellness programs. And as Evan had mentioned in talking to Michelle Shaw from the Wheelhouses, maybe to do some underwater, I didn't call it
Yeah, they call it
underwater.
Aquaspin.
Aquaspins,
Is
yeah.
one option. They actually put the speed bikes in the pool, but there's endless possibilities of in-pool workout things that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We also like it because it offers us an opportunity to have a large glass window on 4455 that has a great pool that, is a great visual feature and, is inviting to the neighborhood. So we feel that this is an exciting opportunity here. With that, because there's a lot of families that will be here and a lot of kids, and we think that we'll be able to draw an appropriate restaurant facility, which will also serve the neighborhood, which would really be nice. The project is also, our goal is to try to design something that doesn't require any variances. We want to try to work with you quickly and efficiently so that we can get under construction. Our goal ideally would be in the third quarter of this year, so we have a lot of work in front of us. And, it's our obligation to you to give you comprehensive plans and, we want to work with you early on, which is really why we want to give you a presentation tonight. It's also working with, the planning department and all the staff on the design of the project. But we don't see utility issues. We're not needing the DOT in terms of highway access. We know we have to deal with the DEC and speedies and all the stormwater stuff, then, a new plan for that. And then the other cool part, which we haven't talked about, and we're going to show you images, but they're not successful yet, is that we're trying to build public space in front of the building that would be not only used by the tenants, but for the whole neighborhood, and to have events here. And so we're programmatically still working, within our organization to figure out how to do that in a flexible, attractive way, and also landscaped way and such, so that we really have a focal point, to the neighborhood. We will be coming back, if everything is willing to continue other projects here. We've bought a couple more properties, that we have no plans for, and they're one of them is a tenanted building. We bought the structure from the current tenant, and we also bought through a tax auction is the house on the corner of that intersection. Yep. It's funky. It's really funky, but it's in a great spot, and we have an idea for a use for it, but we're still ways away, and we want to keep focused on this project here. So what I think we're going to show you is what we call a white model, and what the white model does is it's part of our VR process of working. So we're taking out texture and material, but you get a sense of volumetrics of what we're trying to do, and hopefully you can recognize some of the buildings that are here.
Finally, it looks like winter.
Yes. So the building on the bottom left is the four-story structure that we're looking at. We're trying to do a modern building that has materials in context with the neighborhood, and you'll begin to see that as we, begin to show you some color and some feel that we're working on. But again, this looks hard, but it's still a sketch, and we're still working on it. We also have some interesting architectural challenges, which are what we call front to back, is that the front of the building is on the other side of what you're looking at, but the highway and the formal front is what you're looking at here. So we're looking at putting more glass on it, because some of the tenants, we're going to try to get them to take advantage of the fact that there's a lot of visual impact by cars coming in the westerly direction on 4455. This, towards the parking lot is the entrance to the residential component. You can see it on the right. There's a lobby where the cursor is. And we have a couple of different components that that we're building into the project. One is that we want to have kind of a swing hotel space, so that the residents in the building can have guests and have a room where their guests can stay in. And the third floor, we're looking at just a lounge space with, whether it has a fireplace or other components. Will have a kitchenette in there, but it'll be a gathering space for the tenants. And then on the upper level is an outdoor terrace that, again, this is pre-designed, but gives you a sense of what we're beginning to think about, and it's just a communal space. We're also looking at value in the basement, where we want to create small spaces for the tenants, so that they can have a space if they want to have a wood shop, if they want to work in an office environment and have a home office, if they want to have storage space, if they want to put, we're also going to have bicycle spaces downstairs, we're going to have a gym, and we may have some commercial space. We actually had an idea of moving our office down into the lower level, and we have some interesting studies that if we elect to do this, which is to bring light into the lowest level of this building through these wonderful light wells that are all on the southern side of the building. And if nothing else, even if we don't do that, for the gym space and the other public amenities, there'll be some really nice natural light down in the lower level. In our next presentation, we'll also outline some of the sustainable components into the design that we're working on here, because we're going to try to do something that's different from all the other housing projects that are being constructed, including the ones that are on our own campus. If we walk through the common area here down below, you can see we're beginning to look at some trellis structures. If there's a restaurant there might want to be some outdoor seating. We're looking at some bubblers for kids. Just some real nice landscaping. We're thinking that we want a space where somebody could, have a program, or if you want to have music and somebody have some live entertainment, you could do that. If you wanted to have a food truck come onto the site, we want to be able to accommodate that. But it's creating some events. There was a couple of neighborhood events last year that we did at 33 Arlington, and they were very successful, and we were surprised at how many people showed up and such. So we're working on that. The lowest level, which has the commercial space, is the least designed yet at this point, but it's going to have the overhang of the upper three floors that will create the ability to walk and move and be out of the weather. But it's going to have more glass. We just haven't gotten there yet. The apartments themselves also want to be a little bit more urban, in the sense that all the living spaces, we're looking at having floor-to-ceiling glass. and then you're going to say, well, how do you do that to people that are going to live on the highway? And we have figured out ways through the type of glazing we can use and the way we can insulate it to make those apartments quiet. And if you actually come up to our office now, you can see that we're right on the highway and our office is really nice and quiet. So it's just paying attention to that level of detail and such. And it's going to be critical because you're sitting on the highway and you get to enjoy the highway in some ways and it not bother you. The views from this side of the building are also pretty spectacular of the Vassar campus and beyond. You can actually, from the third floor, you'll be able to see Mount Beacon from up there, which is pretty nice.
I assume you have an elevator in the building now?
Elevator building, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the other part of this presentation could be we can show you the beginnings of some color here. And I guess now's the time. You know, the textures that we're beginning to look at are also similar to textures that we're using, you know, on the building itself. Again, we want more detail and, you know, more lyricism to it. Maybe if you can do the shot of the entrance. But, you know, again, we're looking at a lot of movement on the facade to create, you know, activity so that it's not, even though it's a boxy structure, you want to break that mass down into different events that reflect the function on the inside of the building. So, you know, again, you know, different from some other projects that you even looked at tonight, like Eastdale, which is a little bit more traditional. We're moving it, we want to do something different to that. And a lot of the materials and gestures are things that we've already used on our campus, which, again, we'll present, you know, as we put our formal application into you. And lastly, and sorry for the ramble, we're trying to design this so that all the setbacks are, you know, as per the ordinance. All the, you know, we want to have important landscaping. We're trying to be as thoughtful as we can with our neighbors, and so we've, you know, brought them into the conversation and showed them what we're thinking of. And there's also some questions here that we'd like to present and ask you as a board, because we're not sure what the right thing to do. And I'll give you an example of one. At the front entrance to the residential part right there, we're asking the question is, should that walkway connect to the walkway that is owned by the DOT?
Probably.
Yes.
You know, and is that a good thing? And then right now there's a fence along the property line, and it's an ugly fence that meanders, is maybe a polite word, but it's in disrepair, and so we would put a new fence there. But do you want a fence there? Is there a better way of doing that with landscaping?
Yeah, I don't think you need a fence there.
Landscaping, I think, would be preferred. But
Yeah.
What's everybody else's feeling? I mean, this is discussion here, so chime in.
Yeah, it's close to the road, though, you know? You have a lot of children in that
Hmm.
space. I don't know if you would or
Okay.
you wouldn't, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
I guess you want to protect that, but there's a sidewalk along the road as
Yeah,
well
yeah.
already.
The first 20 feet from the curb in, when there were 6 or 7 small odd pieces, because Springside Avenue used to cross over. You can
Right.
sort of see the angle of Springside Avenue. Crossed over, and there's a Dr. Pedalvillano and
Yep.
across the street. And so that used to be the connection there before the highway came. So there were 5 or 6 different pieces that we bought from the DOT, and then there was one piece that we bought from the town that was part of that town road of Springside Avenue. The DOT, for some reason, wanted to keep the ownership of that first 20 feet. So we can't build on that. We may approach them at some point, you know, if we want to add some street trees to that, but they want to keep that if they ever want to add another lane to the highway, and I don't see that right now, but 50 years from now, it might be different. And we were pleased that they decided to keep it, because the maintenance of that sidewalk is horrible to deal with. You end up plowing it, or, you know, using a snow blower on it, and then the DOT, or I thought it was the DOT, would come with their plow and you know, and then
Cover it up
cover up
again.
all the work that you
I mean, that's
did.
why it's good to have a buffer, a good-sized buffer between the sidewalk and the highways.
Yeah.
Which seems to be.
Turns out that Mark Pfeiffer is responsible for doing that work to the side, on the DOT's property, and they don't even reimburse the town for it, which is kind of amazing.
Is that a two-lane road? Two-way road?
It's one way.
A one-way.
It's one-way coming in the direction
And the other
towards the...
side is one way the other way.
Yes, that's right, that's right. So we think that this is a really good spot for this building. You know, it's central. We like the activity. We need more activity. If I was, if I, you know, could go back a year, we let a year go, and we should have done this a year before, because part of the success of this neighborhood is bringing more people and more activity and such. And so the tenants that we've shown this to are really pleased, and as you know, Evan said here, he's beginning to, the tenants are all working together. It's pretty amazing. There are 8 women-owned businesses that are in our campus, and how that happened, maybe we've talked about this here, but we don't know, and they're all working well right now, so we're pleased with that, and they're interacting in a really positive way.
Does anybody have any comments on architecture?
Everything you've done has been great, as you know. I'm a big fan. I mean, I haven't seen anyone do it better than you. The roof is very close to being a flat roof. You know, if you can come up with an alternate design, some way, make it not look like a flat roof.
Okay.
It would go a long way.
Peter, we've done a tremendous, the code is changing in March, and it's complicated in terms of a lot of things that would have worked really well given the current code. We wanted to go up on the roof also and use it, because it's really and you get into handicap issues that are in law, where you then get into such levels of expense for but
I'm just saying,
but
take
the
a
visual
look,
part of it, yeah.
Take a look at it, because it looks like a flat roof, and that could be a problem. So just keep it in mind. You know, if you can come up with an idea, if anyone can, I'm sure that you can.
Thank you. We'll do that, and we also understand that all the HVAC equipment can't be seen, and you know, so.
Right. I mean, maybe any kind of, if there's some flat areas that green, you know, make green roof, or grow some greens for the restaurant downstairs, whatever.
You know, it's all a great idea. We'd love to use that roof, you know, and it's just, unfortunately, by only having 21 units and 8,000 square feet, it's really hard to, you know, to build that level of space that doesn't pay for itself, you know, in some way. But we're really trying to stretch here. The whole idea of bringing light downstairs and making the basement into something. We also still have some challenges with that, because we, you know, and we're starting our soil tests next week, where to understand rock and to understand groundwater and all that, because it'll affect the way we design stormwater.
I like the way you brought in, you know, amenities into the building itself. The, you know, in this corner that we're looking at now, with
Thank you.
The open space up top, and then even guest space is an idea nobody else has even thought of.
Well, we'll let you know in a couple of years if it works.
Yeah.
But we've again, it's trying to look at the marketplace and not try to do what's being done. It's trying to do something a little different. And we're in kind of I have a tremendous amount of respect for people like Joe Kirchhoff. Working at that scale, and we don't have to deal with having to be all things to all people, you know, and so we can craft this a little differently, you know, and such. And what that means, I don't know, other than we want this to be full of light. You know, our office, we get such great feedback in our office just because of the amount of sunlight in there, so.
And I appreciate that you've reached out to the neighbors, because I know when you had the building at the end there, that was a concern of them, you know, right across from those houses. So now that it's parking and you're landscaping it nicely, hopefully that fits in better with the neighborhood, the other neighbors.
So you feel that this is a better scale too, the 4-story? I mean, this is all within the zoning, but.
Yep. Quite a few neighbors were concerned about the 5 stories as well.
I mean, when you came in originally, I know there was a question about the parking capacity. So I think the approach that you're taking now makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, we actually tried to put the build, you know, again, it's just being realistic, because you don't want to build something and then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, and then we have, and the plan is to step through, you know, this may change what we may want to do, but, you know, we're trying to work with the, you know, with the ordinance here. We like what it does to the streetscape. I think it's and again, it's trying to be a neighborhood that's eclectic, that has different things going on, and that's really, you know, kind of that Quonset hut building of 33. I couldn't believe it last night, or 2 nights ago, I drove by there, and it goes back to it, all the parking lots there were full. You're wondering, well, this is 7 o'clock at night, what's going on here? And you just love to see that activity, you know?
Yep.
And you want to stress your parking lot. There's got to be times where, you know, it's full, because there's a lot of times where it's empty. So it's trying to find out what that balance is. And the fact that, you know, Mark Pfeiffer liked the idea of putting parking on the street, again, it makes it feel more like a neighborhood. And, you know, and I hope, you know, do you feel the same way? In terms
Yeah, I
of
mean, you
that
have
the
a lot
parking's
of,
good thing?
pavement is fairly wide there, I believe, so.
Yes.
So that lends
Yeah,
itself to that as well.
Yeah, the road is about 33 or so feet wide now. And so his requirement is 24 feet, so that gives us, you know, 9 feet. The spaces are 9 or 8 feet? Something like that.
Steve, there's a study that has begun on another one for the Route 9, in the Route 9 vicinity approaching the Mid-Hudson Bridge, but it's also looking at the arterials going out this far. And so they'll be looking at what, you know, conceptual recommendations on possible changes to the arterials.
Right.
So you're going to be, probably you're going to be ahead of it, but you mentioned there's that, you know, what's going to happen in the arterial. The assumption that it's going to be a 3-way superhighway forever may actually change. It might be worth just seeing where that's at and what kind of ideas are coming up.
There's a website that you can, I don't have the, I don't have the web address, but they do have a website established.
We can send it to you, Steve.
Yeah, that's great.
Talk to county planning, they could probably point it to you. But, I mean, even, I went to one of the meetings and, you know, discussion was even, can we reduce that to 2 lanes to have more buffer and such.
Well, you know, it's
for
funny
people
because
to
the
make it more
highway is
fit.
not busy there other than, you know, a couple of prime moments.
Prime
But
roads.
if that was a slower road, our connectivity to Raymond Avenue would be so much better.
Yep.
And it would be so meaningful. You know, the changes that have been being talked about for Raymond would be amazing to see. You know, it seems, and I know this isn't part of this discussion, but it sure seems like that Raymond Avenue corridor is so underutilized and has so much potential. You sit there some nights at the Rotary by the Juliet and you're thinking, wow, you want more stuff here. Where is everybody? You know, and it really has so much potential. And we feel like we're close enough, but that walk, you know, just crossing that highway is not as comfortable as you really
There's
like it
also
to
a
be.
study right now for that end of Main Street to make that more like Raymond Avenue as far as walkability and such.
Is that
So
study out? Is that
is
that-
ongoing right
It's
now.
also in progress.
It's
Yeah,
in
I can,
progress.
Steve, I can
There's a
point you in the
consultant.
direction of both of those studies.
Thanks.
Yeah, just.
Yeah,
send
that's
me-
great.
Send me an email and I'll get it back to you.
Thank you. And I'll get you the seeker documents, because I know you need
Mm-hmm.
to weigh in on that. Are there other things that just from all your planning experience, that, you know, that if you see the basic concept here, things that you, I mean, obviously, we're going to have bike racks, and obviously, there'll be benches out there, and it'll be lit. I mean, part of what makes these buildings great is, you know, in good design is just great lighting, right? And so that needs, we have a real good landscape designer, that Michael Boyce, who I guess have you seen his work? But he's really a
Not
skilled
sure.
guy. And
I mean, generally, the county has the Greenway guides to help you create, you know, human scale lighting. And
Yeah.
and one thing we've been talking to, because we all went to a lighting seminar, is keeping the Kelvin temperature of the lights not too high, because that, you know, looks like you're staring at the sun with these new LED
Right.
fixtures, so you got to be careful of that. Any other comments from people? I think it looks good overall. I assume we're going to make an application soon.
Yes, yeah, we're gonna, you know, try to be as efficient, and we appreciate, you asking the hard questions so that we can answer them, you know, because we'd really like to make into the building season this year, and that's asking a lot, and, you know, it's not trying to overstress the process, but, you know, we're going to try to be extremely diligent in terms of.
For the apartment units, how many bedrooms are you thinking, 1, 2, and/or 3, or just
Right
1,
now,
2, or-
and to maybe your comment, you know, to Mr. Finelli's comment is, right now, the plates are the same for the second, third, and fourth floor, other than the different public functions. There are 3 two-bedrooms, 2 that are 1 bedroom with a den, and then 2 that are 1 bedrooms. That may change a little bit, but we're
Okay.
also thinking of going up on the roof and being able to create some shapes and some, you know, some mezzanine spaces to make the form of the building more interesting, so.
Okay, good.
But that's basically, at 21 units is really the plan.
So when you calculated parking already, like how many parking spaces per unit did you figure on, or is it?
Let's see here. Yeah,
The overall parking requirement was 46, so we have 58, I think.
Yeah.
The last line there?
Yeah, 47 spaces is required, and we're showing 58.
Okay, great.
So.
That leaves some room for guests as
You-
well.
You know, again, it's us doing our own studies, up the hilltop, again, surprising how many cars. We built more spaces than we've been used to building, and, you know, we've had, it hasn't happened a lot, but we've had complaints about not having enough parking, you know, like during holiday season when people have guests over. and
People visit,
stuff like
yep.
that, you know, so, and that's where actually the on-street parking is really helpful.
That'll help, yeah.
You know, and also if we're gonna have food, sometimes people wanna come in, stop in, you know, and that's a little bit more practical in some ways if it's right there by the front of the building, so.
Well, it used to be a symbiotic relationship. If you're there for the yoga or something, you go over and have some food after, or vice versa. Or swim lesson, have some food, so it's.
You know, to that point, it's
all-
amazing to see how busy Wheelhouse is, because her classes are sold out pretty much. And the number of people that go to the chakra bowls, and for all the calories that you lose by going to one of her classes, you know, you get 95% of them back. But it's a real nice social thing as well. We'll likely come back at some point, because we want to do some outdoor seating around that building because of what she's doing there, so.
All right, great.
So thanks for the comments. Again, if there's anything else, you know, really looking for good ideas.
I mean, the DOT likes to keep sidewalks in there right away because it's a public amenity. That's generally what we see, I think. But unfortunately, that makes them too close to the road sometimes, so it's a dichotomy there.
You know, part of
Try to
all this
figure out.
is trying to create everything that's interactive. We have the dog park up the hill that gets used pretty, you know, it's a pretty well-used facility.
Okay, good.
So we assume that we'll have, you know, pet lovers living in this building, so
Mhm.
being able to get up there and to use that. And so it's really trying to get, you know, so that somebody wants to walk to the chakra bowls. You know, we haven't built all those walkways in. And again, that's part of the stress on a small project, you know, and so I keep asking, the supervisor, isn't there any money to help build sidewalks and stuff like that? And I haven't gotten a yes yet, but I keep asking.
Yeah, I mean, you want to create a good pedestrian environment, and as Nicole mentioned, connecting it to the existing sidewalks is all good.
There's the community developed block grants. Have you looked into them?
Haven't gotten any yeses on that. Apparently, there's a new census tract that came out, so it's looking at that, because that might affect eligibility or something.
Never know.
Yeah. Having a sidewalk come down from the intersection with the traffic lights where Shrek is,
Yep.
that would be great. And it would have to be on the
On the
Shrek side of
Shrek
the road,
side.
because our building's a little too
So all the
close to the road.
parking there and everything is
Yeah.
close, right?
But, and then again, it's funny because we have the neighborhood camera, and so we have on camera that car, and how that car was going that fast right there, but thank goodness it didn't hit our building right there, but it must have veered and then oversteered, and it hit the building behind it and took out the front porch. So if you go up there, you'll see that.
Wow.
So luckily, nobody was, sitting on that porch, but it really, and I don't say that to hurt the benefit of that, the four-way stop, because it really has made
I
a
guess they
difference. It's
ran, they would have
surprising.
run the light either, whether it was a
Right.
stop sign or not, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the stop sign's working well there, at the times I've been through there. Any other further comments? All right, thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming in,
Thank you.
Steve, and good luck with the project and the application.
We'll see you soon. Thanks for the comments.
Last up, we have a time extension, Spacking Park Partners LLC. I move that the planning board grant 2 90-day time extensions of conditional site plan approval from February 21st, 2020 forward to August 19th, 2020, noting that no further time extensions are available.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Any further business before the board tonight?
I'd like to compliment Mrs. Barone. She donated that painting of her grandfather. It's on the back wall.
I motion that we terminate this evening's meeting.
Second. Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting has been terminated for today.